Chapter 541, Guo Hongyao II. Everything then progressed rapidly. Li Xijun had another talisman pinched between his fingers. He stepped forward, only to find Xu Xiao hovering in red armor with a gray flame burning in his grasp, turning his head back. Their eyes met, and both men felt an unspoken intensity. Li Xijun noted the greed and cruelty etched on Xu Xiao's face, feeling as if he were being seared by the scorching sun, teetering on the edge of a volcanic eruption. Conversely, Xu Xiao felt an icy chill emanating from Li Xijun, feeling as if the man before him possessed eyes filled with the frost of winter, capable of penetrating his very thoughts. I must eliminate this man. That was the thought that crossed both their minds simultaneously, prompting them to step back, putting distance between them. Xu Xiao contemplated, the situation is dire, and I cannot afford to delay any longer. Once I achieve Foundation Establishment Realm, I must kill him right. Li Xijun, too, grew wary. This man's mistakes stemmed from information inconsistencies. He believed the immortal sect still held some sway. I cannot make him leave. He hurled the talisman in his hand once more, shouting, Li Wushao, if you hesitate, you will die at this man's hands. Xu Xiao's flame seemed particularly effective against demonic creatures. Li Wushao finally reverted to his human form, but was grimacing in pain. His expression darkened as he soared into the air, gritting his teeth while pursuing Xu Xiao, wary of using his tail hooks again. He fumbled to retrieve a Dharma artifact from his storage pouch. Xu Xiao's face flushed as he pulled out two more talismans. Gray flames swirled around him. The Dharma artifact that Li Wushao had drawn looked like a rod, but it melted before it could even reach Xu Xiao. Li Xijun's eyes grew icy. He threw out the Hanlin sword that was hanging from his waist, shouting, take this. Li Wushao coiled his tail hooks and caught the Dharma sword that was glowing with a snowy light in his hand in one swift motion. Xu Xiao summoned the gray flame once again to block it while accelerating on the wind. Just ahead, a Qi cultivator raised an axe to strike at him. Boom! Without even as much as a glance, Xu Xiao hurled the flame forward, incinerating the attacker into ashes. A wave of shock rippled through the surrounding cultivators, and they dared only to release mana lights from a distance. The only ones bold enough to approach Xu Xiao and fight back were the more powerful cultivators like the White Monkey. The rest silently retreated, shaken by the display of power. The red ring beneath Xu Xiao's feet was probably a special flying shuttle, granting him remarkable speed. However, he was halted by several opponents, forcing him to weave left and right, unable to accelerate. In a bid to break free from their encirclement, he unleashed the deadly flames that had earned him a fearsome reputation. Just as he smiled at his impending escape, a flash of sword light cut through the air in front of him. Xu Xiao's expression darkened. He swung his sleeves, releasing a burst of flames as he growled, "Which blind fool dares to stop me?" The Dharma sword in the hands of the man blocking him instantly melted, and gray flames coiled up his dry arm like a venomous snake. Yet the man seemed prepared. With a speed that outpaced the flames, he severed his own arm at the shoulder. With a sickening noise, the dismembered limb turned to ashes before it could touch the ground. Xu Xiao was both visibly stunned and enraged. He opened his mouth to unleash more flames, but was interrupted by Li Wushao, who had already caught the sword. Besides, Li Xijun's talisman followed closely behind. Bastard. Xu Xiao's eyes darkened with fury. He took a moment to use his spiritual sense, discovering that the man who had dared to stop him was a shriveled, thin old man. The old man retreated silently with a stoic expression. The blood from his severed arm slowly ceased, and his gray eyes radiated a calm resolve. The old man's face was unsettlingly familiar to Xu Xiao. He recalled seeing him often, tending a spirit field by the lake, a place close to this very spot. The Li family held him in high regard. What was his name again? Li Xijun, Li Xijun, Li Xijun, a mere unrefined Qi cultivator. I can't believe it's a pathetic, unrefined Qi cultivator. Bah! Xu Xiao shouted, his face flushed with anger. But as he raged, Li Wushao's sword struck him. The demonic creature relied on its overwhelming demonic power to knock Xu Xiao off balance, causing him to spit up blood. The red ring beneath his feet faltered, slowing him down. The lethal Foundation Establishment Realm talisman barreled toward him, crashing against his paper-thin shield. The shield shattered like glass, leaving Xu Xiao exposed before the onlookers. Flushed with humiliation, he attempted to ride the wind and force several attackers back with another burst of flames while reaching for a pill in a bottle he had taken out. But in that fleeting moment, a long rod swept through the flames and struck his palm, shattering the bottle of pills. Xu Xiao cried out in pain, feeling as though his heart had been pierced. He realized it was the powerful White Monkey who had struck him. Desperation consumed him, and despair settled in as he lamented, "I can't believe I've lost to this despicable little creature. It seems like I won't be able to travel the world with Jenner." Having exhausted all his trump cards and options, he continued to fight back with flames desperately as tears streamed down his face. Suddenly, he felt a tight grip around his neck, a powerful force propelling him out of the encirclement, and in an instant he found himself flying several liu. A low cry echoed from behind him, followed by a sweet voice that rang in his ears. I came as quickly as I could, and I finally made it in time. Xu Xiao, utterly drained yet filled with a mix of both sorrow and hope, turned to see a cute female cultivator in a red dress. Her fair skin and adorable appearance struck him like a bolt of lightning, momentarily stealing his breath away. The female cultivator's attire was simple yet striking, a red dress adorned with black accents and a layer of soft gauze over it. She was breathtaking, her brows resembling delicate leaves. In her hand she twirled a long, thin red Dharma artifact that looked like a feather as she observed Xu Xiao. Li Xijun, witnessing Xu Xiao escape from their encirclement, felt his blood boil with frustration. He coughed, nearly spitting blood. The frustration of having his calculations and plans foiled got him biting his lip so hard it bled. Beside him, Li Wushao was even more agitated. His reddened eyes widened to an almost unnatural size, taking up almost half of his face. A hissing sound escaped his throat as he gritted his teeth, demanding, "Who are you?" For a moment, Li Xijun lost his composure, but he forced himself to calm down. Activating his talisman qi, he cooled his head and then tugged at Li Wushao's sleeve. "Li family of Qingdu greets Senior. If I may ask, which sect or gate do you represent?" Li Xijun asked. The female cultivator, however, did not respond to his question. Instead, she looked at Xu Xiao, her expression brightening as she spoke in a delicate voice. "The legacy of Grand Marshal Uncle has been buried for so many years, but finally it has come to light at the right time. Good, very good indeed." Xu Xiao immediately understood that she was someone from the Immortal sect who was here to rescue him. I've been hiding in this Devil Dao's territory for far too long. Finally, the Immortal sect has come to my rescue," he exclaimed, a note of hope in his voice. Reactions varied among those present. The female cultivator looked momentarily stunned before her lips curled into a small smile. "Yes, I'm Guo Hongyao from Crimson Reef Immortal Island. For the past few years, we have been fighting with Wanyu Sword Gate, Chunyi Dao Gate, and other Devil Daos. I've kept you waiting, but I shall escort you back to the island now." Li Xijun felt sidelined, and the expressions of the Li family members grew uneasy. The female cultivator's gaze finally shifted to them, her demeanor cooling as she addressed them sharply. "What kind of prestigious clans are you? Can't you even tell that I'm from the Dao lineage of this island? I've heard that you've been working closely with Wanyu Sword Gate and Profound Peak Gate. You lot are truly bad eggs." At this point, Li Xijun had no choice but to cup his fist and attempt to clarify. "Senior, you've misunderstood us. We are just ignorant and have never seen the spells and techniques that originate from this immortal island." Guo Hongyao's expression hardened as she waved her red sleeve dismissively and returned her gaze to Xu Xiao. "I cannot simply overlook the fact that your family has bullied the disciple of our immortal island's gate." Taking a deep breath, Li Xijun asked, "What do you mean, Senior?" Guo Hongyao sneered coldly at his attempt at feigning innocence. "Command your demon pet to kill himself. As for you, since you are the descendant of the sword immortal, I'll let you off the hook if you apologize to the disciple of my gate. For compensation, let Li Yunjiao come in person." "You are not qualified to come," she said. Li Wushao felt the hooks beneath his robe stir restlessly, circling ominously at his feet. His crimson eyes glared at the female cultivator with palpable hatred as he suppressed the urge to roar at her. Meanwhile, Li Xijun's expression grew cold as he lowered his head and said, "Senior, you must be joking." The moment those words left his lips, the atmosphere plummeted to a freezing point. Guo Hongyao's smile vanished, and Li Wushao stepped protectively in front of Li Xijun, his eyes fixed on Xu Xiao as two black lights flickered ominously beneath his clothes. "This isn't up to you," Guo Hongyao sneered, dismissing Li Wushao entirely. Chapter 542, Beheading. Guo Hongyao spoke with biting sarcasm while Li Xijun restrained the hooked snake before him. The female cultivator was a disciple of the Immortal Gate, and they were without the protection of a formation. If a fight were to break out, it could spell disaster. Hence, Li Xijun had no choice but to speak courteously. "This is our fault, but the hooked serpent is my elder's spirit beast, so I'm afraid we can't simply surrender him to appease you. Please reconsider, Senior." Hearing this, Guo Hongyao's arrogance seemed to deflate. She scanned the group before turning to Xu Xiao. "Bring the 6 Ding merging fire token here," Guo Hongyao demanded. The Li family still had considerable influence, and Guo Hongyao was wary of the looming threat of sword qi or a talisman. Intent on securing the artifact for herself after such a long journey, she reached out, but her hand closed in on air. Guo Hongyao snapped her head and glanced over quickly, only to see Xu Xiao smiling. "Senior, this spirit artifact has already recognized me as its master. I'm afraid I can't hand it over," he explained softly. This spirit artifact was the source of Xu Xiao's strength, and giving it up was naturally out of the question. Although Guo Hongyao had saved his life, Xu Xiao knew that everyone coveted the Purple Mansion Realm spirit artifact, so he clearly was not going to hand it over so easily. Guo Hongyao hummed in acknowledgement and feigned indifference. However, a flicker of impatience flashed across her face as she turned away from Xu Xiao. HMPH, you're just a lucky guy. How dare you talk back to me here? Without my martial granduncle's method to enhance your cultivation, what threat could you possibly pose? Turning back to the others, Guo Hongyao had to console him with a smile. Xu Xiao, what should their punishment be? She asked. Distracted by thoughts of Liu Lingzhen, Xu Xiao replied, someone I know is still waiting at the foot of the mountain. I need to bring her here first. Guo Hongyao had not expected Xu Xiao to say that and suppressed her growing impatience. He shot a look at Li Xijun and snapped, make it quick then. Li Xijun saw his opportunity to escape the tension, but Guo Hongyao was not about to let him slip away. She gestured with her hand, commanding, you stay, let the others go. Chen Mufeng quietly descended the mountain to fetch Liu Lingzhen, and Xu Xiao immediately rushed over on the wind to meet her. Seeing Xu Xiao leaving Guo Hongyao's side, Li Xijun discreetly stepped aside. Xu Xiao and Liu Lingzhen exchanged a few sweet words before Xu Xiao lifted his head and glared at Li Xijun. Guo Hongyao, observing the exchange, furrowed her brow and asked, anything else? Li Xijun was secretly worried, but felt a sudden heat at his waist. The tracking jade pendant was warming up. He discreetly covered it with his sleeve, blocking the faint glow while suppressing his delight. The elders are coming. As Xu Xiao was about to return to Guo Hongyao's side, Li Xijun stepped forward, deliberately stalling him with a question. Does Lady Liu and the Xu family have any friends or relatives in town? Perhaps we should bring them along as well. Xu Xiao frowned, but Liu Lingzhen seemed delighted. Brother Xu, isn't that wonderful? Why don't you bring all your brothers to enjoy the splendors of the Immortal Gate? She suggested. Guo Hongyao's expression soured. Sensing her displeasure, Xu Xiao quickly shook his head and said, haven't you seen what kind of people they are? They have no place in the Immortal Gate. Growing annoyed by the couple's exchange, Guo Hongyao turned to Li Xijun and demanded, give me that sword. Li Xijun feigned reluctance, but Guo Hongyao was in no mood for further delays. With a hand gesture, the sword on Li Xijun's back rose to the air, struggling briefly before settling in her grasp. What a fine sword, she praised, admiring the beautiful sword that shimmered like a pool of cold water. Yet Li Xijun remained stoic, neither pleading nor begging her. This vexed Guo Hongyao, and she began wondering whether this punishment might have been too lenient. Let's see how long you can put up that act. Raised in luxury, Guo Hongyao had never known defiance. Others always bent to her will. Arrogant and domineering by nature, she now turned the gleaming blade of her sharp sword toward Li Xijun, pointing it at his throat from a distance. The silent threat was palpable, hanging heavily in the air like a promise of violence. Just then a hiss filled the air. Li Wushao transformed into his true form. A massive hooked serpent glared at her dangerously with his eyes that were as large as windows. Guo Hongyao sneered at him. You think you can? Her words were cut off as a streak of violet light split the sky, illuminating the scene with a brilliant white and purple hue. Before she could react further, a cold voice thundered, how dare you, bitch. Guo Hongyao was enraged. She turned to the source of the voice, and her gaze landed on a female cultivator arriving on a thunderbolt. She was clad in jade armor and matching boots, and her long hair streamed with purple lightning, casting several silver-white halos around her. She looked nothing short of heroic. Her voice, clear and resonant, stunned everyone. Guo Hongyao, feeling the sting of insult, lowered the sword and stared at the approaching purple light. Li Qinghong had traveled thousands of li, only to find her nephew threatened by a sword held by a Foundation Establishment realm female cultivator. His subordinates appeared deeply troubled, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Overcome with shock and rage, Li Qinghong was at a loss for words. In her fury, she opened her mouth and unleashed a beam of white light. Boom! The white light swelled instantly, radiating a destructive aura. Upon contact, purple lightning cascaded down like a waterfall. Guo Hongyao was caught off guard. The thin jade piece in her hand glowed red faintly as she reached out in a futile attempt to defend herself. Ant is here. Li Xijun, having prepared for this moment, quickly seized the hooked serpent and bellowed, kill him first, kill him. Caught by surprise, Li Wushao immediately sprung into action with his long hooks. He had actually been accumulating his strength to attack Guo Hongyao, but now swiftly changed his target to Xu Xiao as instructed. The hook sliced through the air with a piercing shriek. Xu Xiao, unable to react in time, stepped back and raised a token, emitting a burst of red light. The prolonged battle had depleted his sea of qi, leaving the red light flickering weakly. As a result, the hooks easily penetrated the barrier like it was just a piece of rotten tofu. The shields that could once defend against Foundation Establishment realm attacks were already spent against earlier assaults. Xu Xiao felt a crushing blow to his chest as the tail of the hooked serpent impaled him mercilessly. Brother Xu, Liu Lingzhen was even slower to react. As she lunged forward, a sharp, agonizing chill ran through Xu Xiao's throat. The second tail of the hooked serpent had already sliced through his body, severing his head. Xu Xiao's eyes widened with terror as the last vestiges of his consciousness flickered through his mind, replaying scenes like ephemeral dream bubbles. holding beauty in my arms, trampling prestigious clans, joining an immortal gate. One moment he was conquering Mount Qingdu and crushing Lijiang town, and the next he was embracing Li Xijun and Hongyao in his arms. In the end, the last thought that crossed his mind was, why did it end like this? Things shouldn't have gone this way. Mercy. Guo Hongyao's plea was lost in the roar of the thunderstorm, unheard over the chaos. Everyone watched as Xu Xiao's head fell, disintegrating into ashes amidst the tempest. His death was swift. Liu Lingjun, losing the support of the Dharma wind, screamed as she plummeted downward. Every bone in her body shattered into fragments upon impact with the ground beneath her. Li Xijun heard a faint, crisp sound in his mind, like a string snapping. The world around him remained the same yet felt utterly altered. Damn it. Guo Hongyao emerged from the maelstrom of thunder, her body wreathed in black smoke, teeth clenched in bitter fury. Staring at Li Qinghong, she laughed through her anger. Good, good. Chapter 543, Sunseeker Ring I. Good, very good. Guo Hongyao hissed as her lips trembled with rage. Li Qinghong, holding her spear steadily, glanced around with flowing purple light and replied casually, yes, I agree. Bitch. Guo Hongyao could do nothing but repeat the insult. Unperturbed, Li Qinghong thrust her spear forward, transforming it into a barrage of pale purple shadows that surged forward with an overwhelming force. Guo Hongyao shielded herself with a jade token, snarling, how dare you ruin my plans? You will pay for this. I swear I will kill you, bitch. Li Qinghong found herself missing Kong Tingyun's golden mountain, wondering when her own family might craft a similar artifact, and cast Guo Hongyao a sidelong look. By now, Li Xijun and the others had scattered, leaving only the hooked serpent, which glared with an ominous intensity. It had been thwarted time and time again, even failing to take down a single Qi cultivator. With its dignity wounded, the hooked serpent's hatred for Guo Hongyao only grew as her disdain mounted. Caught off guard by one of Li Qinghong's thunderous strikes, Guo Hongyao felt the blow reach her core, but her advanced techniques allowed her to circulate her qi and hold off the worst of it. Glancing warily at the menacing hooked serpent, a sense of fear began to creep over her. With her hands free, Guo Hongyao performed a hand seal, only to hear Li Qinghong's voice ring out as a surge of purple light erupted before her, causing her jade token to tremble and her arm to go numb. The spell broke in her hands. Guo Hongyao faltered as she thought in shock, how could such a minor clan produce someone this powerful? Struggling to regain control, she shouted, This was your family's fault, ruining my plans. How can you now turn around and blame me for it? Growing bolder with every strike, Li Qinghong's jade armor gleamed with purple light as she spoke softly, an Eastern Sea cultivator speaking of right and wrong. How amusing. Guo Hongyao, fuming, pulled out a talisman to block Li Qinghong's onslaught, buying herself a moment to act. She quickly chanted an incantation and performed a hand seal. The 6 Ding merging fire token, which had slipped from Xu Xiao's corpse and fallen into the lake, finally rose, floating toward her hand. As the 6 Ding merging fire token settled into her grip, Guo Hongyao's expression turned strained, as though she were holding a scorching piece of coal. She dared to only pinch it between her 2 fingers as she invoked its flame. FSSH. The grayish red fire flared out, barely the size of her palm, nothing like the sweeping blaze Xu Xiao had unleashed with a flick of his sleeve. However, it was enough to make Li Qinghong raise an eyebrow, as the flame, like ash blowing from a forge, quickly consumed the purple lightning without leaving a trace of it behind. Li Wushao's expression darkened instantly. His demonic energy poured forth continuously, yet against this flame, it burned only like kindling, causing the flames to grow stronger and leaving his entire body aching faintly. What kind of spirit fire is this? It is specifically meant to counter demonic creatures. Meanwhile, Guo Hongyao managed to stabilize herself using the flame technique, but the air around her distorted as the fire intensified, and her own expression grew more grim. The gray flame withdrew, reconsolidating into a token, while her internal injuries from the lightning strike earlier flared up, sending pain through her organs. She had no choice but to reveal her Dao foundation. Flames enveloped her entirely, hanging like ribbons from her clothing, as she brought her hands together in a seal, conjuring a red light that radiated from behind her head. Once the red light appeared, it shone intensely, blinding the 2 Li family members and dulling their spiritual senses as if they were moving through thick mercury. With the flame warding them off, Guo Hongyao took the opportunity to soar into the air, her hands covered in blisters, thinking to herself, the 6 Ding merging fire token is a purple mansion realm artifact. It drains life and damages vitality. I cannot use it lightly. I'd better retreat for now. Though she had grown up training on the island and had little real combat experience, she could assess the situation well enough. The 2 had already formed an encirclement. If she ended up in their grasp, they might not kill her, but she would certainly suffer greatly. She spat a harsh parting threat. You better hope I do not catch you next time. With that, she hastily ascended into the sky, flying at full speed. Once she had gained some distance and seeing no one pursuing her, she tucked away the spirit artifact and, seething with resentment, muttered angrily, If the 6 Ding merging fire token had not been mysteriously delayed from descending into the Great Void for 100 years, there'd be no such thing as the Li family. Curse them. Although she had initially come to the mainland pleased to have discovered such a talent, this lightning cultivator had ruined her plans. Although she had still acquired the spirit artifact and would be rewarded on her island, her mood was significantly dampened. When I get back, I will find out who that bitch is. With that thought, she flew off quietly, crossing Lake Xian, and landed on a smaller, subsidiary island of Crimson Reef Island to tend to her wounds, capturing several people to restore her vitality. Just then, one of her subordinates approached to report, Fairy. Just a few days ago, a masked male cultivator raided several of our cargo ships. Guo Hongyao, already furious, snapped impatiently, Explain it clearly. The subordinate trembled as he replied, This cultivator is at the peak of Qi cultivation realm, wielding a golden hammer and following the immortal Dao, yet he employs numerous devil Dao artifacts. He acted alone, destroyed an entire immortal ship, murdered, looted, then vanished on the wind. Useless fools. Guo Hongyao usually cared little for such matters, but her anger against the Li family left her eager to unleash her rage somewhere, and she shouted, Notify me tomorrow before setting out to sea. Her subordinate hastily complied and withdrew. Guo Hongyao consumed blood qi, feeling her internal injuries gradually healing, then shut herself inside her cave dwelling and sat cross-legged to cultivate. Taking out the 6 Ding merging fire token and examining it closely, she noticed the elegant, intricate black patterns on its surface. The more she looked, the more captivated she felt, and could not help but exclaim to herself, What an extraordinary artifact. It is truly worthy of being a Purple Mansion realm spiritual weapon. Just from its appearance alone, one can tell it is something remarkable. She carefully stored the treasure, then sat down to regulate her breathing. As she gradually entered a meditative state, the 6 Ding merging fire token at her waist began to emit a faint red glow, pulsating gently as if it were breathing. At Mount Qingdu, after driving Guo Hongyao away, Li Qinghong descended back onto the mountain. Li Xijun approached her with a storage pouch and a small, golden-red ring in hand, with the Hanlin sword already slung across his back. As Li Qinghong struck with a thunderbolt at the critical moment, Guo Hongyao, caught off guard, had not retrieved the sword but had left it floating in midair. The Hanlin sword, being spiritually attuned, drifted back to Li Xijun on its own. Li Qingliao respectfully withdrew, and Li Qinghong listened as Li Xijun recounted the events in detail, breaking into a cold sweat. She nodded in approval, saying, Well done. As for your speculation that this person may carry a thread of fate, how confident are you? To me, it seems he merely obtained the Purple Mansion realm artifact without any evident effect on his mind. Li Xijun considered her words briefly before replying with certainty, I am quite sure. Though I did not notice it at first, looking back now, his mere appearance stirred in me an overwhelming hostility. I never once considered an open, civil discussion with him. He paused, feeling that the events of the night were shrouded in a strange fog, and murmured, But Qingliao. He started by trying to reason with him kindly. Had he not summoned Old Man Liu, our family's lead would have ended up there. If fate did interfere, it seems Qingliao was affected far less. Or perhaps, something else altogether influenced Qingliao. Chapter 544, Sunseeker Ring II. The two pondered this for a while, then Li Qinghong spoke in a low voice. Maybe another perspective is worth considering. Was Xu Xiao's death also destined? Could his death have ensured the 6 Ding merging fire token would land in Guo Hongyao's hands? Even if he had not died, he might not have parted with the artifact. Li Xijun mulled over the sequence of events before asking, Aunt, did you bring back the immortal mirror? Of course. With such an extended stay overseas, Yuanping insisted. Li Qinghong then produced the mirror. Li Xijun nodded. In that case, if Xu Xiao was indeed under a destined path, he would not have died here naturally. But since Auntie wielded the mirror, it fell outside the threads of fate and disturbed its influence, leading to his swift end. Li Qinghong raised her brows in slight confusion and said gently, Then why would a Purple Mansion realm cultivator from Crimson Reef Island not claim the 6 Ding merging fire token themselves? Not much time has passed since it fell from the Great Void. Li Xijun looked down. My guess is that Guo Hongyao was the nearest Foundation Establishment realm cultivator of Crimson Reef Island, but given the changes to the situation, the artifact is now beyond fate's grasp. But what still puzzles me is how Xu Xiao advanced so quickly, rising to such a significant level within only a year or so. Even Chuyi took over a decade to reach the Foundation Establishment realm, and Xu Xiao's skills fall short by comparison. The two exchanged a silent look. Although they had rid themselves of him, the entire family had been thrown into disarray. Li Qinghong took out the storage pouch, sifting through a stack of overseas pills and talismans. It seems the 6 Ding merging fire token contains its own storage. Otherwise, Xu Xiao would not have amassed such wealth. These items did not pique her interest. she only picked up the small, golden-red ring, roughly the width of a pinky finger, and neither metallic nor silver in appearance. Despite her experience, she could not discern anything special about it. The ring emitted a hazy red glow, and a faint inscription in small characters read, Sunseeker Ring by Lu Jiangxian of the Green Pine Temple. A relic from the ancient Green Pine Temple. How exceedingly ancient. It is probably best not to display it openly. Li Qinghong praised the ring briefly, unable to gauge its grade but guessing it was likely a unique flying shuttle. Just as she was about to store it, the immortal mirror on the table suddenly burst with a dazzling light. The radiance was brilliant and clear, as if the sun had risen over the land, casting beams of resplendent light that filled the room. Unlike the mirror's usual cool, moonlike glow, it now emanated the warmth of a vast desert sun, filling the chamber with a fragrance of gardenias. Ah! Li Qinghong cried out involuntarily, swiftly joining her hands to raise them. She looked up to see the Sunseeker ring trembling as if it were crying or laughing in joy, shaking free of Li Xijun's grip and leaping into the air instantly, also bursting forth in radiant light. The room grew stifling hot in an instant, with golden sands cascading down from above, filling the chamber. Faintly, the chirping of orioles and the calls of deer could be heard, accompanied by the soft jingle of camel bells. Clang. At the moment the golden light appeared, every plant on Mount Qingdu swelled with vigor, animals filled with vitality, and vegetation flourished. In the underground chamber, a sweaty Li Ximing suddenly looked relieved, his aura surging rapidly. The light swiftly spread throughout the area. The Sunseeker ring on the table gave a gentle roll, and the mysterious energy abruptly receded, disappearing without a trace. The inner world of the mirror. As Lu Jiangxian followed Li Qinghong on her return, his expansive divine sense stretched out, observing the Li family estate just as Guo Hongyao was descending. Scanning the area, he detected no trace of a purple mansion realm cultivator. Meanwhile, an ethereal golden aura shrouded the once-proud Xu Xiao, now faint and diminishing like water evaporating under the sun. On the other hand, the 6-ding merging fire token in Guo Hongyao's hand pulsed subtly with an unnatural liveliness that didn't belong to an ordinary spirit artifact. One glance told Lu Jiangxian everything he needed to know. This spirit artifact is far from ordinary. There must be some sinister aspect to it. Xu Xiao, he was likely just a source for its sustenance. Perhaps he once held a thread of fate, but after this ordeal, he has been nearly drained dry by this artifact. With that, Lu Jiangxian figured out everything. It was likely that the spirit artifact or its master had forcibly accelerated Xu Xiao's cultivation, feeding him various elixirs to artificially raise his cultivation, only to drain him dry afterward. Now, having been taken by Guo Hongyao, she too was unlikely to escape a grim fate. A purple mansion realm spirit artifact that can traverse the great void, it could have returned to Crimson Reef Island at any time. It seems to be deliberately avoiding other purple mansion realm cultivators by wandering outside. Considering how the artifact's influence eroded the mind, Lu Jiangxian concluded that Guo Hongyao might not even survive the journey back. He glanced at her briefly and dismissed her from his thoughts. Instead, he focused on observing the changes in Xu Xiao's condition while the last vestiges of life remained in him. Too bad I cannot establish contact with him directly. If I could access his memories, I'd likely find a wealth of information, perhaps even techniques from the merging fire system. The Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual Purple Mansion Realm Edition that he held in his hands was nearly complete, though since he had not personally cultivated it, his understanding of the text fell short of the original author's insights. The Purple Mansion Realm section could barely pass as adequate. Just then Li Xijun approached from outside, holding a golden red ring. As Lu Jiangxian's divine sense scanned it, he read the small inscription inside the ring and froze. Lu Jiangxian of Green Pine Temple. I was a disciple of the Green Pine Temple, that's. For the first time, the hazy layers of his inner world began to lift, and the space filled with countless rays of golden light. Lu Jiangxian stood there, momentarily stunned, gazing at the sky now painted in vibrant. He took in the name of the artifact, chewing over it slowly. The Sunseeker Ring. As the Sunseeker Ring radiated golden light, fragments of his memories flickered within Lu Jiangxian's mind, hazy and veiled in mist. He saw faintly mountain peaks blanketed in pine and vast plains stretching as far as the eye could see. Strange. The Green Pine Temple ruins are supposed to be on a coastal island. Why do I see endless plains? A brief wave of confusion swept over him, only to be drowned out by the subsequent flood of indistinct memories. Green Pine Temple. Yings. For a brief moment he froze, but the memories evaporated like mist, as though forcibly erased by some unseen power. Lu Jiangxian muttered a curse under his breath, his face flushing with frustration. At that moment, the golden light above grew brighter, becoming a piercing, almost blinding white. His consciousness reeled back from its intensity, unable to withstand the blazing radiance. The Sunseeker Ring itself transmitted an eager, jubilant energy, like that of a child discovering a new plaything. It cast a fragment of golden light. The beam drifted down like a bird and settled in his palm. Surrounding him, ethereal sounds began to echo around him: birdsong, the calls of deer. This strange golden light seemed to emerge from a narrow aperture, projecting outward in a cone shape. Its sharp point grew so intensely bright that it turned white, trembling as it connected with the great void beyond. Lu Jiangxian stared at the golden light in stunned silence, barely able to process what he saw. Almost speechless, he managed to murmur out in astonishment. Bright Yang Metallic Essence. Chapter 545, Bright Radiant Yang Imperial Union Essence I. In front of him, the golden light spread out in countless radiances, drifting through the air lightly. Lu Jiangxian held it in his hand, feeling a warm, gentle sensation, as numerous illusions unfolded beside him, with all kinds of colors streaming gracefully. These visions alternated between scenes of union between men and women, sparrows taking flight and orioles chirping, to resplendent bursts of light, lonely smoke rising, and even images of emperors in reverence, receiving crowns and ascending thrones. Ultimately, they transformed into a pure, glowing orb. A sudden insight dawned within him. This metallic essence was fully named Bright Radiant Yang Imperial Union Essence, embodying growth, union, the harmony of male and female, celestial light, bright fire, all things related to the bright yang. The Sunseeker ring is indeed unusual. It is likely that Xu Xiao extracted it from the 6 Ding Merging Fire token. As for how it came to be within that token, I'd need to get my hands on the Purple Mansion Realm artifact to truly understand. Lu Jiangxian pondered aloud. His mind had already begun to linger on the 6 Ding Merging Fire token. As the metallic essence danced in his hand, a wealth of insights came to him. This essence could be used to transform demonic creatures, influence fate, and establish bonds between individuals. Its potential was powerful and expansive. So this is the nature of metallic essence. It is astonishing to witness such marvels from just a single. Holding the wisp of bright yang metallic essence, Lu Jiangxian's initial amazement faded into a more pragmatic contemplation of how he might use it. First of all, this must not be given to anyone else. He quickly dismissed the idea of bestowing it upon anyone in the Li family, because even if they had the capacity to wield it, this single wisp would likely cause significant trouble if released. If his guess was correct, if this metallic essence were to fall into the world, it would instantly lead to unchecked indulgence, spontaneous births, rampant growth of all things, and finally transform into a monstrous evil, bringing about wanton killing and attracting the wrath of Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. After all, metallic essence is a rare treasure to a cultivator of the Purple Mansion Realm, especially when the bright yang fruition attainment seems to be within the possession of Mount Qingdu. Lu Jiangxian mumbled. Having seen both the 6 Ding Merging Fire token and the bright yang metallic essence, Lu Jiangxian began to formulate deeper insights. The crafting of Purple Mansion Realm artifacts was likely closely tied to metallic essences. The 6 Ding Merging Fire token, for example, might have been forged through merging fire and thereby imbued with the qualities of a malevolent creature, which would explain its peculiar effects. If that is the case, then the Sunseeker ring contains the bright yang essence, while the 6 Ding Merging Fire token likely embodies the merging fire essence. By that logic, this mirror should also contain an essence. Lu Jiangxian pondered thoughtfully to himself, recalling the mirror's continuous outpouring of supreme yin moonlight as he speculated further. It seems undeniably to be of supreme yin essence. Judging by its abundance, could it contain the entire supreme yin fruition attainment? It's definitely more than just supreme yin, given how the supreme yin moonlight flows endlessly, like an unending stream. Lu Jiangxian had traveled widely over the last century, studying countless texts, yet he had never encountered a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator in the supreme yin system. The few supreme yin and lesser yin methods he found were of low grade, with none capable of reaching the Purple Mansion. He had never heard of a Golden Core Realm cultivator in the Supreme Yin system either. Only one ancient immortal called Ying seemed possibly related to Supreme Yin or Yang systems, but that was several millennia ago. At the very least, this Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual could be refined a few more times. Looking over the bright Yang metallic essence in his hand, which was emanating a gentle warmth, Lu Jiangxian thought to himself, with this metallic essence in hand, I finally have some influence over the external world, though I must be cautious and remain discreet to avoid attracting the attention of the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. After some deliberation, he acknowledged both the advantages and disadvantages of wielding the bright yang metallic essence. It could potentially manifest as divine light to injure enemies, but such use would squander its value, and he resolved to employ it sparingly. As for members of the Li family pursuing this path, there were no other Dao partners in Yue State, and the Wei bloodline obscured things well enough to prevent suspicion. Only the north presented a concern as he thought silently. The Mahas in the north harbor an unshakable blood feud with the Wei clan, and now Mount Luoxia also has designs on bright yang metallic essence. The north is best avoided. Fortunately, the Mahas seldom venture south unless they are reincarnated, and Luoxia remains aloof, unlikely to meddle across vast distances. The Eastern Sea contains several bright Yang Dao lineages, so issues should be minimal. Drawing his thoughts back from the metallic essence in hand, Lu Jiangxian began to reflect on the yield from his journey to the Eastern Sea. During the trip, he accompanied the Li family, but spent most of his time drifting on the sea, rarely disembarking. When they did find the Green Pine Temple ruins, they bore traces of Purple Mansion realm cultivators, so Lu Jiangxian refrained from peering in too deeply. Nevertheless, he had managed to gather a considerable number of techniques which supplemented his understanding of metallic essence, allowing him to piece together some key insights. Many of the techniques had ancient origins, often containing references to metallic essence fruition attainments. These findings often mentioned various yin and yang fruition attainments. Some sources referred to 3 yin and 4 yang, while others cited 5 yin and 4 yang. However, one fact seemed consistent: yin and yang fruition attainments were not equal in number. Similarly, many fruition attainments seemed isolated, and suspiciously so. For example, shamanic talisman, jade true, and merging owl. These metallic essences emerged independently, and it was rare to find more than one associated cultivation technique. With these questions resting in the back of his mind, he was quietly contemplating when a familiar feedback suddenly came from the link within the Great Void. Lu Jiangxian understood immediately. Li Ximing has broken through to the Foundation establishment realm. At the time, Li Ximing had been cultivating on Mount Qingdu when the bright yang essence had brushed past him. He cultivated the Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual, the Bright Yang System. This was equivalent to having a peak Purple Mansion realm expert use their divine abilities to secure his breakthrough. With the opportunity laid so plainly before him, and if he still could not advance, he might as well find a rock to hit his head on. This child is indeed fortunate. Were it not that Li Ximing lacked any apparent threat of fate, Lu Jiangxian might have really thought he was a fated one. Born into a clan, nurtured by his entire family, innately gifted for alchemy, with a penchant for secluded cultivation that keeps him from venturing out unless in the direst circumstances, he seems almost like a fated one. Throughout the entire clan, only he has hope of reaching the Purple Mansion. Returning his focus to the Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual before him, Lu Jiangxian was confident that with the assistance of the metallic essence, he could elevate the manual to an even higher level. Once this manual is refined, I can explore combining metallic essence with talisman qi. Time in the mirror world always seemed to flow like water. Back then, Lu Jiangxian always felt lonely and bored. Now, time felt almost scarce. Chapter 546, Bright Radiant Yang Imperial Union Essence, II. Qingdu Cave Dwelling. The Sunseeker ring spun once in midair before it lightly drifted down again. As it settled, all the extraordinary visions within the cave dwelling disappeared. Li Xijun caught the ring and examined it closely. It looked no different from before, and its materials remained indistinct. It also felt surprisingly light in his hand. Inspecting it with his spiritual sense, the Sunseeker ring seemed quite ordinary, almost as if it were just a simple flying shuttle, though its materials were unknown. If Li Xijun had not witnessed the speed at which Xu Xiao rode on it, he never would have guessed it was a treasured artifact. Nearby, Li Qinghong checked the mirror, finding no anomalies either. Li Xijun murmured, "Aunt, this should not be a bad thing." "Indeed," Li Qinghong nodded. The two studied the artifact for a while but gained no further insights. Li Xijun then added, "Aunt, the altar described in your thunder technique has been completed. It has not been used since you went abroad. Now that you are back, you could test out the celestial thunder." Li Qinghong cultivated an ancient technique, with an immortal foundation capable of summoning thunder from the heavens. Yet, with heaven and earth undergoing such changes, she was not certain if the attempt would work. After nodding lightly, she put away the Sunseeker ring and returned the immortal mirror. With everything finally in order, Li Xijun felt no regret about the lost opportunity to break through to the 7th heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm, having secured so many other crucial items. After leaving, he flew for a while before landing in Lijing town. Kneeling figures lined the steps of the central hall, and a cursory glance revealed many familiar faces, mostly from the Liu and Su families, all bowing their heads with sobs filling the air. Seeing this, Li Xijun descended, and a Liu family member immediately crawled over, tearfully recounting old ties and grievances. Li Xijun offered polite comfort before quickly moving along. As he approached, the jade court guards on both sides kneeled in respect. He stepped into the central hall, which was simply but elegantly arranged. At the highest seat sat a middle-aged man with a square face and broad forehead. Li Xijun greeted, "Elder brother." This was Li Zicheng, the current head of the family, who had served as the leader for several years. His experience had granted him a more tempered demeanor. He greeted his approaching younger brother with a quiet voice. "It's been a while since I last saw you." "The Liu and Su families have been kneeling here for an entire night. What do you think, eighth brother?" Li Xijun stepped back and with a gesture replied respectfully, "Elder brother manages the family and I would not presume to advise." Li Zicheng smiled, straightening his posture. "The Liu family will not receive heavy punishment. A night of kneeling is enough. They have fallen far and have little left to penalize. Let them disperse. As for the Su family, I plan to split them into branches. Xu Xiao is dead, and his lineage will be removed from the records. The other Su branches, having reported the devil cultivator, will receive rewards." He continued, "Captain Chen was killed by Commander Chen Mufeng himself. We will report that he died from devil cultivation techniques. His family will receive protection, and Chen Mufeng will be demoted from a battalion commander to a court guard." Li Xijun listened as his elder brother went on. "As for Elder Qinghong, I sent him a reward, but he declined it and returned to farming. I can only pass it down to his son. Elder Qinghong has contributed immensely, though none of his children have any spiritual orifice. He has received all the recognition we can offer, but with his Dao path severed, there is little else we can give him." Li Xijun nodded. "Elder brother handles these matters well. I need not say more. As for Qingliao, there are additional rewards coming from the mountain." They spoke a while longer until Li Xijun cupped his fist, sensing weariness beneath his brother's composed demeanor. After dismissing the jade court guards, he spoke gently. "Elder brother, appoint more assistants if needed. Do not exhaust yourself. Your health is important, as is maintaining your cultivation." Li Zicheng hesitated before nodding slowly, his gaze dropping. "I personally promoted Chen Mufeng. I bear some responsibility for this outcome," he said softly with a regretful sigh. Li Xijun was about to say something when he saw a servant from the clan affairs courtyard approaching. The servant bowed deeply and said, "The old clan head has summoned the two of you. Uncle Yuanping." The two brothers exchanged a glance, realizing something was amiss, and their expressions turned grave. Li Zicheng then whispered, "I will go up the mountain right away." Neither dared to. They hurried up the mountain, and indeed, a solemn air greeted them. Entering the courtyard, they saw people coming and going. As they stepped into the inner courtyard, they saw someone lying on a bed. Li Yuanping's face was pale as he leaned against the edge of the bed. Li Qinghong sat beside him, while his wife, Madame Ren, who had only reached the third stage of the embryonic breathing realm, sat nearby. She was in her 40s, with a few wrinkles lining her face, and she was quietly sobbing. The two kneeled in fear, and Li Yuanping scanned them briefly. Though his voice was weak, it remained gentle. "Years ago, my brother and I kneeled before ancestor Tangya's bed. His words still echo in my ears. In the blink of an eye, I cannot hold on any longer." Li Xijun and Li Zicheng offered quiet words of comfort. Having studied under him for many years, Li Zicheng felt a deeper bond with him and could not help but tear up. Li Yuanping then asked, "Where is Li Ximing?" Bracing himself, Li Xijun replied, "Brother Ming is currently in seclusion, breaking through to the Foundation establishment realm." Li Yuanping gazed into the distance, his lips pale as he whispered, "It's all right then." Madame Du supported him, stricken with grief. She was Li Xuanxuan's primary wife and had managed the household for a period of time. Now, at the third heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm, she had reached her limit, with no path forward. Madame Du had borne two sons for Li Xuanxuan. One by one, both had died before her eyes. Decades ago, she had bid farewell to Li Yuanxiu, and now she was about to lose Li Yuanping as well. Her hair had turned white and she was powerless. Li Yuanping glanced around, many words left unsaid, and could only murmur quietly, "Chenger, from now on, you will have to rely on yourself." Li Zicheng could no longer hold back his tears. He bowed deeply while kneeling, striking his head on the ground twice. Li Yuanping waved a hand, silencing him, then looked toward Li Xijun. "Xijun, I will have to trouble you to clean up Minger's mess. When the elders are gone, the family will depend on you." Li Xijun lifted his head, locking eyes with Li Yuanping. He understood that Yuanping knew everything. His brows relaxed, and he replied softly, "Xijun has only done what the younger generation should do." Li Yuanping let out a faint, hollow laugh, his voice weakening. "Elder sister, I entrust the family affairs to you and brother." He gradually sank down, a faint, almost inaudible sigh escaping from his throat. "Ancestor, it is not that I have failed you. The heavens simply did not grant me more time." In the stillness that followed, the light in his eyes dimmed. Beside his pillow lay two handwritten books, which Li Qinghong, wiping away her tears, picked up. One was titled Tales of the Desert, a compilation of notes left by Li Jiangxian, and the other was a chronicle of 32 years of household management. He had only ordinary cultivation, worked tirelessly his entire life, and left behind no secret manuals or rare techniques. The only books he wrote contained merely his lifetime observations. Li Qinghong carefully put them away and rose to her feet. Those kneeling below remained silent. Li Qinghong surveyed them and spoke softly, "Arrange everything well. I will take him to the ancestral hall." Li Zicheng nodded with a choked reply while Li Xijun stood frozen to the spot, staring at Li Yuanping's hand, as if recalling something. His hand slowly caressed the Hanlon's sword without a word. Li Qinghong then ascended on the wind and entered the ancestral hall, first reading the two books before storing them on top of a table. The ancestral hall remained as quiet as ever. Rows upon rows of memorial tablets lined the walls, with incense smoke flowing between them. Li Qinghong stood silently for a moment, then spoke softly. "Grandfather, my brother and I have both reached the Foundation establishment realm, yet without you here, the family feels unsteady and our hearts are empty." Li Qinghong had heard every word Li Yuanping spoke on his deathbed. The sadness lingered in her heart. Usually reserved, she rarely spoke so much, but she muttered to the tablet of Li Tongya for a while before finally leaving in silence. She did not have time to dwell on her grief. She bathed, changed clothes, and lit incense, praying continuously for 3 months to prepare to ascend the altar. Chapter 547, Seizing the Light, Capturing the Flame. The Li family conducted a modest funeral with all members clad in white mourning garments. Following the deceased's will, Li Xijun kept the ceremonies understated. However, King Li Jimin of Mount Yue hurried back and mourned with evident sorrow. Whether his grief was genuine or not, he at least showed the necessary respect. Li Xijun helped him to his feet, observing that he had reached the 6th heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm, which was proof that he had been diligently training over the years. Yet in today's Li family, a Qi cultivator was no longer a key asset and was merely part of the middle ranks that were in charge of helping with routine tasks. Each position on the Spirit Mountains was highly competitive, and recently, the Jade Court Guards counted dozens of Qi cultivators. At this level, his cultivation was far from exceptional. Li Xijun kept vigil in the mountains for 2 months. One day, he looked up to see the sky ablaze with the dazzling sun, with not a single cloud in sight. Raising his arm, he dusted off his sleeve, flicking away traces of ash. 1,000 li of lake waves. Where could this sandstorm have come from? Suddenly, he paused, a look of astonishment crossing his face as he thought to himself, "Brother Ming has succeeded." Li Xijun hurried down the mountain, where he indeed found the entrance of the cave dwelling radiating golden light. The wind whistled softly, and a young man stood inside, hands clasped behind him, his face youthful. Streams of golden light and flame wove around him as he stepped forward with a smile and announced, "I have established my Dao Foundation. 6 years of cultivation, and now, 27 years in total, I have achieved the Radiant Origin Pass." Li Ximing had broken through to Foundation establishment realm half a month prior, spending some time stabilizing his cultivation before finally emerging from his seclusion. In front of him, Li Xijun calculated the time, surprised. Only about 3 years. Was it difficult, or did it just come naturally? How did it happen so fast? Li Ximing paused, considering, then replied, "At first it was very difficult. Gathering my power was exhausting. Even with high hopes, I had expected it to take at least 5 years. But just a few months ago, I suddenly had visions filled with golden light. My immortal foundation began consolidating on its own, progressing at dozens of times the speed of my own efforts until it was fully formed. I do not know what caused it." As Li Xijun listened on, the golden light jogged his memory of the Sun-Seeker ring. With his thoughts churning, he looked on as Li Ximing began proudly explaining, "This immortal foundation is called the Radiant Origin Pass. It draws down heavenly light and captures flame, allows one to tread upon beams of light, banish evil, dispel calamities, nurture life, and he paused, catching himself in his moment of pride, then continued more seriously. Its main abilities include 2 great wonders. The first is seizing celestial light, which could channel heavenly light into spells, surpassing most Dharma lights. He performed a hand seal, and the light in his hand transformed into a vibrant, brilliant gold, appearing almost as if he had mastered some special spell. Li Xijun, having been trained in perception technique, stared directly at it without averting his gaze, nodding approvingly. Li Ximing continued, "The second ability, called Bright Yang Gate, summons a blazing gate that can suppress enemies. The more one's cultivation advances, the taller and more imposing this gate becomes." He laughed, adding, "As for manipulating fire, the blending of yin and yang, treading on beams of light, those are minor techniques, not worth mentioning. After all, the Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual was a grade 4 technique." The immortal foundation it formed was formidable, offering comprehensive enhancement across all aspects. Although it lacked a specialized technique, it still surpassed grade 3 techniques by a significant margin. He was brimming with pride, so much so that he failed to notice the white mourning clothes draped throughout the mountain until he finally caught sight of Li Xijun's sorrowful expression, causing him to realize belatedly, "This is..." He froze. Li Xijun sighed, saying, "Please accept my condolences, 7th brother." Li Ximing's sleeves trembled as he came to the painful realization. "Oh," his voice immediately choked with emotion. The joy in his heart dissipated, leaving him standing there in stunned silence for a few moments before asking, "When did it happen? Has father already been laid to rest?" He murmured 2 questions, then began to cry, descending with Li Xijun as they landed on the mountainside. Li Ximing lamented, "Eighth brother, I only wanted to put it off until after reaching the Foundation establishment realm to see him again." Since that terrible argument after returning from the Xiao family, Li Ximing had not seen his father again. Li Yuanping, filled with disappointment, had stubbornly refrained from seeking him out. Li Ximing, fearing the encounter, put it off day by day, unwilling to face his father's expression. He had not expected that this delay would stretch into years, until his father had already passed away without them ever meeting again. Walking through the graveyard now, gazing at the rows of gray headstones, Li Ximing's face was wet with tears, his entire body trembling from head to toe. Cold sweat clung to his skin, unceasing. He continued until he reached Li Yuanping's tombstone. The inscription was newly engraved, detailing his life's achievements. Li Ximing kneeled down weakly before it, and Li Xijun silently stepped back, intending to give him some privacy. But unexpectedly, Li Ximing choked out softly, "Stay." So Li Xijun remained, standing quietly. In front of him, Li Ximing seemed more lost and fearful than truly sorrowful, crumpled before the gravestone. He kneeled there for a long time, until the full moon rose and soft raindrops began to fall from the sky, pattering down onto the earth. Only then did he snap out of his daze. Li Ximing leaped up in a panic, glancing around before bolting away as if fleeing, rising into the wind in an unsteady flight back to his cave dwelling. Twice he stumbled over the doorstep, nearly falling flat against the stone table inside. On the table lay a stack of small letters, each placed there by others outside his secluded chamber during his period of seclusion. Dazed, he picked one up, which read, "When will Ximing emerge from seclusion?" The family's stock of 13 types of medicinal pills requires sorting and distribution. If you have any free time, please come to see me. The handwriting was firm, deliberate, suggesting careful thought. It was signed by his father, Li Yuanping, roughly 6 months earlier. He pulled out another letter. "If Ximing emerges from seclusion, please come see me." This letter was more recent, only 3 months old. Li Ximing continued reading through all 15 letters. Each was shorter and more urgent than the last. The final letter was dated just half a month ago. At last, Li Yuanping no longer addressed him by his full name. His handwriting, no longer neat, was crooked and uneven, with just a simple message, "My son, come quickly." Previously, Li Ximing had felt only a vague numbness with little real grief. But now a surge of anguish rose within him, overwhelming and relentless, as he realized the full weight of these words. He dropped the letter as if struck, gasping, "Father, father, I was wrong, father." His mind thundered and everything around him began to spin, intensifying the agony within his mind and body. His whole body, from his fingers to his toes, shook uncontrollably as the world fell silent. Thud. Gradually, Li Ximing regained awareness, finding himself slumped over the table. With both arms spread wide, he gathered up the letters, clutching at them and scattering them over the floor. One letter remained caught on his sleeve, the 4 small characters on it unbearable to read. He was lost in a haze for just a moment before his Foundation establishment realm cultivation restored his clarity. He stood still, his face pale and expression blank. All this time he had been too afraid to see his father, choosing instead to wait for his father to summon him. However, Li Yuanping had held out stubbornly until in the fading light of his life, he had gone from issuing orders under pretense, to subtly inviting, to pleading for his son's presence, and finally, to a sorrowful, dying gasp. Yet not a single word had reached Li Ximing. His mind was a blur, filled with confusion, but at last he understood. Those things he had been too afraid to face were now lost, and he would never have the chance to face them again. Chapter 548, Escorting and Slaying Demons. Yi Mountain City. A towering fortress stood firmly against the mountain, with streams of light flowing over it. A middle-aged man, clad in black gold spirit armor, stood upon a golden shuttle, his sharp gaze under furrowed brows fixed on the distant horizon keen as a falcon's. His armor, dark and glistening with black gold scales, blended seamlessly with the golden bow on his back. Beneath him, his diamond-shaped flying shuttle radiated a sharp golden astral chi. Years of experience had tempered his one sun-checked ambition. His gaze was now slightly lowered, his eyes half closed, with a calmness that concealed his sharp resolve, his spirit refined and poised for action. Xuanfeng rose on the wind from the city walls, hovering for a moment. In the distant sea of trees, demons circled but showed no sign of advancing. He returned to the wall where a group of young, unfamiliar faces approached him from below. Only one middle-aged man moved forward, his appearance dignified and scholarly. He spoke softly. "Brother Feng, Fairy of the Autumn Lake is waiting in the city." Most of those who had followed him south all those years ago had married, had children, and become casualties in repeated battles, devoured by demons. Only Fei Yi remained at his side, now in his 70s, yet still cautious of taking a higher step in his cultivation. Although the Azure Pond sect had never commented directly, the tragic massacre of the Fei family years ago still remained vivid in his memory, so Fei Yi dared not act recklessly. Li Xuanfeng nodded, not surprised at all. If Ningguan has come, then the Taoist master must have emerged from seclusion. Li Xuanfeng's armored boots rang crisply as they struck the ground. Riding the wind down, he soon spotted a woman standing by a small stall in the marketplace, gazing at the wares with interest. Ningguan had a unique presence. Although she used an Azure Pond spell to mask her cultivation, Li Xuanfeng, with his spirit eye perception, sensed her cultivation level with a mere glance. With their cultivation close in level, he approached and greeted her softly. Xuanfeng greets senior. Ningguan, now at the peak of Foundation Establishment realm and nearing the Purple Mansion realm, looked back at him with a gentle smile. Not bad. So when are you planning to enter seclusion for your breakthrough? Li Xuanfeng, who had been refining his cultivation since reaching the mid-foundation establishment realm long ago, responded, I fear my foundation may be unstable. There is no rush for a breakthrough. Ningguan nodded, smiling brightly. I have seen your archery skills. Thinking back, when that Golden Tang Gate disciple came south all those years ago, it was you who defeated him, was it not? She asked with a knowing smile. Li Xuanfeng had not expected her to bring up old events, but now it mattered little. He murmured an apology, while Ningguan nodded and said, You were so young then, yet you had already grasped the essence of the bow. At the time, I thought it was a Purple Mansion realm cultivator's doing, influenced as I was by Man on Creek or Jiang Boking's influence. But it seems fate works strangely, and it led us to cross paths here. Remembering those days, Li Xuanfeng felt a pang of melancholy, though he showed no outward change in his expression. Ningguan continued, There is some news I should share with you. I will be glad to hear it, Li Xuanfeng quickly replied, instantly focusing his attention on her. Ningguan shook her head and said, From the overseas Crimson Reef Island, there was a female cultivator of the main bloodline named Guo Hongyao. She flew to your family's territory and caused quite a scene. Apparently she wanted to take someone as her disciple, but things did not go well on either side, and they parted on poor terms. Crimson Reef Island. The mention of family matters instantly grabbed Li Xuanfeng's attention. Ningguan gave him a knowing look, speaking softly. As she returned overseas, the female cultivator suffered a severe ambush, barely escaping her own territory with her life. She managed to escape with talismans, but her prized artifact was stolen. The perpetrator was outrageously bold, and Crimson Reef Island has already dispatched people to investigate. Ningguan's lips curved in a slight smile, clearly amused by the news. Then she suddenly added, With the Green Pine Temple ruins involved, the Crimson Reef Island will likely not investigate thoroughly. The injury to that female cultivator, though, will likely set her back for decades with little hope of progress. Li Xuanfeng froze momentarily, his brows knitting in thought. To have robbed a direct disciple of an immortal sect on their own turf, who would be so daring? Ningguan smiled without responding. The two flew together for a while, then landed in unison in front of Yuansu's cave dwelling, as if by mutual understanding. They passed the oddly shaped bronze beasts in the courtyard, surrounded by a swirling white mist that chilled their ankles. Taoist Master Yuansu lay relaxed on a stone platform up ahead. Greetings, Taoist Master. The both of them greeted as they cupped their fists respectfully. Taoist Master Yuansu's face appeared smooth and round, always lacking any sense of intimidation, and now seemed even more otherworldly. A faint golden seal swayed at his waist. Li Xuanfeng and Ningguan bowed respectfully. With a wave of his hand, Yuansu gestured for them to rise, asking, Wanner, how are matters proceeding? Ningguan answered with deference, Honored ancestor, those who were suspected of bearing a thread of fate have all received the news of Green Pine Temple and have each made their way to the sea. No complications. Yuansu nodded, his fingers resting on the seal. After all, the descent of fruition attainment from Mount Luoxia has drawn together a few threads of fate. It is to be expected. If these individuals can stand out, whether they truly bear a thread of fate or not, at least they have some skill. They should be able to bring back something from the ruins. Ningguan nodded and continued in a soft voice. However, there is one major development. Taoist Master Xu Xiao recently visited Crimson Reef Island and then Golden Feather Sect, where Zhang Tianyuan personally saw him off with great respect. Taoist Master Xu Xiao was a Purple Mansion realm cultivator who had mysteriously emerged from the lifeless, emerald waters of the Azure Pond grotto heaven. Yuansu's expression darkened at the news, muttering, What is he up to now? Yuansu found dealing with Xu Xiao exasperating. While Kai Buzi, despite his foul temper, was at least a familiar face and manageable with his not-so-high cultivation, Xu Xiao was utterly unpredictable. Yuansu had hidden himself in Yi Mountain City and even gone into seclusion to avoid encountering Xu Xiao. Now, upon hearing of him again, his expression soured. After a brief pause, Ningguan hesitated, then continued somewhat awkwardly. It is rumored, according to the Kai family, that he took a portion of. She abruptly stopped speaking, but Yuansu waved his hand, speaking softly, Go ahead, say it freely. As such, Ningguan continued. A portion of profound radiant dual essence qi. Yuansu sat up, contemplating this information for a moment, then remarked, Ah, yes, it must be profound radiant qi. Only something of that nature would compel Suiguan to personally make the trip to Golden Feather Sect. He is at the peak of the Purple Mansion realm. Could he be attempting to break through to the Golden Core realm? He made this deduction before furrowing his brows and reconsidering. Number that does not seem right. The two below remained silent. Yuansu soon regained his composure, falling quiet before he looked over to Li Xuanfeng and nodded approvingly. Not bad. You are progressing faster than I expected. All thanks to the Taoist master's guidance, Li Xuanfeng responded politely as he offered his thanks. Over the past decade, Yuansu had indeed been generous to him, providing spirit armor, precious medicines, golden stone qi, and secret techniques, essentially treating him as a junior disciple. If not for the sensitivity of these items, which Yuansu had bestowed upon him directly, Li Xuanfeng would have sent some of them to his family. In fact, Yuansu's kindness only made him feel more uneasy. Yuansu watched him thoughtfully for a moment, then said softly, "Very well. Your current strength is respectable enough to carry some authority. Take a trip to the Eastern Sea and handle 2 matters for me." Li Xuanfeng was overjoyed, responding eagerly, "Taoist master, please give me your instructions." He was overjoyed for 2 reasons. First, he had been confined to this place for decades, and now he finally had the opportunity to venture out. Second, Yuansu finally had a task for him. Without a purpose, the powerful spells and spirit treasures he had received felt almost burdensome, yet refusing them had never been an option. Chapter 549, Escorting and Slaying Demons, II. Accepting the assignment promptly, Yuansu explained, "First, I have a group of my disciples needing escorts to Spleetered Island. That sea region has been turbulent recently, and Ningguan cannot act freely, so you should take this trip." He added a cautionary note, "Do not stir up trouble, just deliver them safely. If you do encounter resistance, feel free to kill anyone who is not of the Dragon Clan." Seeing Li Xuanfeng nodding in understanding, Yuansu continued, "Once you reach Spleetered Island, continue northward until you reach Unison Sea. There, a market run by my Ning family has been harassed by a demon. Deal with it on your way back." "Do we know what it is?" Li Xuanfeng asked. Yuansu promptly replied, "No need for concern. It is only a water-dwelling monkey, a threat to ordinary folks but not to you." Securing the jade seal at his waist, Yuansu added softly, "I noticed it has been years since you returned home. Make the most of it and reconnect with your family." "Thank you, Taoist master." Li Xuanfeng expressed his gratitude, and as he saw Yuansu wave him off, he quietly departed. After a brief pause, Ningguan said softly, "Taoist master, Li Xuanfeng's cultivation has advanced rapidly in recent years. It seems it was merely the lack of resources and techniques in the Li family that slowed him down. He had achieved nothing remarkable before his breakthrough to the late Foundation Establishment realm." "Well, he is a descendant of the Wei lineage," Yuansu replied. "If he practiced a bright yang-aligned path, he would progress even faster. 1,000 years ago, the Wei lineage's affinity with metallic essence was impressive. That was akin to the sun descending into the world." They continued conversing as Li Xuanfeng exited the cave dwelling. Riding the wind, he flew a while before descending at his own cave dwelling. Li Xuanfeng's dwelling was among the finest in Yi Mountain City. As he pushed open the door, his wife, Ning Hemian, met him with their child in her arms, smiling as she greeted him softly. "What did the Taoist master say?" she asked with a smile. Ning Hemian, being from the Ning family, often knew things even before he did, so he was not surprised at all by her question. He took the child in his arms and replied, "I will be heading to the Eastern Sea soon, escorting people and slaying demons." The boy in his arms pursed his lips, his eyes a deep gray, though his brows were softer than his father's. Still young, he appeared rather gentle. "Kinner," Li Xuanfeng called. "Father." The young boy called out in a cheery response. Li Xuanfeng held him close and asked a few questions about recent events. Li Yunqin responded with short affirmations, while Ning Hemian closed the stone door of the dwelling, voicing her concern. "What does the Taoist master mean by this? Is he putting you at risk? Could this be dangerous?" "It should not be," Li Xuanfeng replied thoughtfully, raising his brow as he continued. "I have already mastered Aura Rebound technique and have the black gold spirit armor as protection. My combat power is formidable. Unless I directly face the Foundation Establishment realm heirs of the 3 sects, most would not stand a chance against me." Li Xuanfeng continued, "If I can prepare and keep my distance, even a late-stage Foundation Establishment realm direct disciple from one of the 3 sects would cough up blood under my arrows. Against ordinary Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, they would fare no better than the demons torn apart by the dozens on the battlefront." Li Xuanfeng's tone was calm, though the underlying bloodlust beneath his words was strong. He added softly, "Only those in the southern borders know my reputation as the Golden Bowstring. It will be interesting to see what kind of cultivators I will encounter overseas." Ning Hemian casually responded as she tidied spirit medicines around the cave dwelling. Yes, we all know how powerful you are." Li Xuanfeng, significantly older than her, could not help but laugh when he noticed her youthful demeanor. He thought to himself, when should I take Kinner back home for a visit? I wonder how Yuanjiao and Qinghong are doing these days. Through the Ning family's connections, he had managed to gather various pieces of news about the Li family, though most were only fragments. Now, with the opportunity to return home, he felt a growing warmth in his heart. Mount Qingdu. The ritual of burning incense and offering prayers was simple enough. In fact, simply meditating in front of the incense would suffice. Li Qinghong had carefully bathed, changed from her protective armor into Taoist robes, tied up her hair, and then trained before the incense for several months before flying on thunder toward Mount Qingdu. This immortal mountain was now covered in green pines, with snow piled atop its peaks. A sacrificial altar, over 10 zhang tall, stood on the summit. It was adorned with carvings of mist, thunder, and rain patterns, primarily crafted from bluestone but reinforced with various metals like copper and iron. At the top, 12 bronze and silver statues of various forms were arranged in a circle. Some statues captured thunder and dispersed clouds, while others held spears and bore fierce expressions. 8 of the statues had humanoid forms, while the remaining 4 took on shapes of dragons and serpents. As Li Qinghong stepped onto this ritual platform, she felt the mana and thunder pool within her begin to stir, and the profound thunder talisman pulsed, eager and active. Sitting cross-legged at the center, she placed her hands, palms up, on her knees. Strands of violet lightning began to flow from her body, following and tracing along the patterns that were carved into the ground. Now the 12 statues should all light up. Dark clouds should gather in the sky, and thunder should appear. That would mark the beginning. Li Qinghong activated her immortal foundation, waiting a full half hour. However, only the violet lightning circulated, with no unusual phenomenon appearing, nor was there any sign of the so-called heavenly resonance. Instead, she felt her internal mana depleting significantly. Is it really this useless? She waited a while longer, but not only was there no thunder, there was not even a single dark cloud in the sky. With a sigh, she abandoned the secret technique and switched to using thunder to communicate with each statue in turn. This was another function of the altar, allowing her to calculate where thunder would strike across the land, how many tribulation strikes had fallen recently, and who among wrongdoers was due for retribution by thunder. This is probably pointless too. There are not any tribulation strikes these days, have not even heard of one. This technique is truly ancient. After testing each statue in turn with no result, Li Qinghong's unwillingness drove her to repeat the process twice. Finally, when she connected with the last dragon-shaped statue, she received a response. Shiving, the eyes of the dragon-shaped bronze statue glowed faintly, and suddenly Li Qinghong had a clear vision. Yincheng Prefecture, Wei State. At midnight on the 24th day, twisting thundertail strikes the ancient cypress tree west of the prefecture. The statue emitted a flash of thunder before dimming once more, offering no further response. Li Qinghong blinked, feeling an odd mix of surprise and resignation. It really is an ancient technique, but what use is this? She wondered aloud in confusion. If it truly provided an exact location, Li Qinghong could ride her thunderbolt there and capture this falling lightning with her spells. Judging by the name of it, this was likely some form of spirit thunder of heaven and earth, a rare sight in this age. In recent ages, thunder strikes had become rarer between heaven and earth, and as a result, thunder cultivators were increasingly uncommon. Furthermore, thunder was unlike spirit fire or water. It dispersed instantly upon impact. Unless one was extremely lucky or encountered it in the clouds by chance, capturing it was nearly impossible. However, the information provided by this spell turned out to be the name of a now ancient place, and even if she knew the location of it, finding it would be nearly impossible. Li Qinghong could only sigh in dejection. Moreover, this place is likely far to the north in hostile territory under the wrathful Dao lineage, where deep-seated enmity remains, entangled with threads of fate. It is strictly forbidden to go there. Li Qinghong calculated that the next thunder invocation ritual was 3 months away. She planned thoughtfully. The altar has already been built, and casting the spell consumes only a bit of mana. I will try every 3 months, who knows. One day I might hit upon a UA state city with a familiar name and be able to collect some thunder. Chapter 550, The Elder of Mount Qingdu. Having made her decision, Li Qinghong was just about to sit down cross-legged when she noticed a faint light flickering outside the formation. 2 young men, riding on the wind, entered. One was dressed in a white robe with a handsome face, while the other wore a golden Taoist robe, looking rather downcast. The 2 were, of course, the Li brothers, Li Xijun and Li Ximing. They landed one after the other, and Li Xijun cupped his fist and announced, "7th brother has broken through to Foundation Establishment Realm. I have brought him here for you to see." Li Qinghong glanced at Li Ximing. He still had not recovered from his father's passing, and seeing the sorrow on his face, she spoke to him softly. "The timing was unfortunate. Your father did not hold any blame toward you, so you must come to terms with it." Li Ximing lifted his sleeve and nodded, his expression far more subdued now. he replied quietly. Now that I have broken through to the Foundation establishment realm, I can bring forward the family's plans for refining a few medicinal pills. I will head to the alchemy pavilion on Mount Qingdu in the coming days to study the formula for the barrier-breaking pill. It would be highly beneficial for those advancing to both the Foundation establishment and qi cultivation. Li Qinghong nodded approvingly. Her gaze shifted, catching sight of a few blue-gold embroidery patterns peeking out from under his sleeve. Women are often more sensitive to such symbols, and it reminded her of an orchid. She asked him briefly about matters at home, but seeing his low spirits, she held back her suggestions for sparring and let him depart to recover on his own. Once Li Ximing had left, Li Qinghong turned to Li Xijun and asked, "Junner, does Ximing still have any contact with that woman surnamed Meng?" Li Xijun lowered his gaze and replied quietly, "No, he does not." Li Qinghong sighed. Not wanting her to press further, Li Xijun quickly changed the topic, asking about her thunder techniques. After Li Qinghong had explained, he nodded. "Indeed, most of it is obsolete, but it still holds some use. If you manage to capture a rare spirit thunder, it will have been worth the trouble." "It is more than that," Li Qinghong replied softly, continuing, "I find cultivating here on this altar very comfortable. It allows me to summon lightning and channel my qi better than any other cave dwelling back home. You will not have to leave Qingdu Peak just to make space for me." As they were speaking, a jade court guard approached and reported, "My lords, a Foundation establishment realm cultivator from Mount Yue has arrived at Qingdu." Li Qinghong raised her brows slightly and ascended with a crackle of thunder, descending onto the lake's surface. There she saw a cultivator waiting on a black cloud, his eyes bloodshot and narrow, his vertically slit pupils giving him a rather fierce look. He wore a gray robe and had the appearance of a middle-aged man. The Mount Yue cultivator, who was at mid-Foundation establishment realm, fixed his gaze on Li Qinghong and spoke in a raspy voice. "Are you a Foundation establishment realm cultivator of the Li family?" "Precisely." Li Qinghong cupped her fist, recognizing him as Fei Loya and remaining courteous, replied softly, "I am Li Qinghong and Li Yuanjiao is my elder brother." "I see." The middle-aged man nodded just as the lake's surface split open. Li Wushao rode the wind out from below, shadows drifting darkly beneath his robe as he took a silent stance behind Li Qinghong. From another direction, a golden light streaked upward. Li Ximing, clad in a Taoist robe, arrived on a radiant path, his spell bright and imposing. Seeing the impressive gathering, Fei Loya immediately grew cautious and stepped back slightly. "Does the elder have business with us? Why not come down and discuss it in detail?" Li Qinghong asked politely. Fei Loya, highly wary, declined to enter the formation, shaking his head repeatedly. After a brief struggle to find his words, he spoke awkwardly. "Well, what Li Yuanjiao promised back then, does it still hold?" The group froze, unsure of his meaning, and Fei Loya knew he had no choice but to explain. It turned out that years ago, several individuals, including Yuan Chengdun, had slain Fu Demu to the west. His territory had been given entirely to Fei Loya, who had decided to organize the Mount Yue people to cultivate some spirit patties. Li Yuanjiao had suggested that the Li family could take over the land, and in return, provide Fei Loya with a portion of the annual harvest. However, Fei Loya, who was greedy at the time, had refused his offer. So he had spent years managing the territory himself, only to realize that the yield was less than half of what Li Yuanjiao had promised. He had even sacrificed much of his cultivation time on the endeavor. Regretful, he had now come seeking out the Li family again. Hearing this, the Li family members were delighted and quickly agreed. They moved on to discuss the details, but Fei Loya still refused to enter the formation, so they settled on a small courtyard in the town to finalize arrangements. They had just settled into their seats when Fei Loya appeared restless and uneasy, as though his true purpose for coming had not yet been revealed. After several moments of awkward silence, he finally spoke, somewhat hesitantly. "Your esteemed clan seems to be thriving. However, regarding that matter I inquired about years ago, does your clan have any news?" With Li Yuanjiao absent, Li Qinghong had no idea what this Mount Yue cultivator was referring to. She could only respond diplomatically. "Perhaps my elder brother has already begun assisting you, senior, but why not tell me about it again?" Seeing the blank expressions on their faces, Fei Loya looked briefly frustrated. With a sigh, he clarified, "The Purple Mansion Realm cultivator backing your clan, could they perhaps show me a clear path forward? Alas, he wants to join us." This realization dawned on Li Qinghong finally. Fei Loya could indeed be a valuable ally. His abilities were well-known, skilled in a variety of shamanic spells learned on Mount Wu, and he was both knowledgeable and capable. The prospect of gaining his support was tempting indeed. However, their clan had no true Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. Fei Loya was no fool. He was not someone easily placated without concrete assurance. Li Qinghong found herself in a predicament, and after a moment's thought, spoke softly. "Ah, so that is the matter. My brother also wishes to introduce you to an appropriate guide, but meeting a Taoist master is not so easily arranged. Even we can only do so after rendering great merit. My brother has been sent on a mission and for now will not be able to give you a direct answer." Aware she was speaking to someone from Mount Yue, Li Qinghong kept her words as straightforward as possible, watching his reaction closely. Fei Luoya paused, seeming to ponder her words. His narrow, vertical pupils fixed on her as realization dawned on him, and he quickly replied, "I understand. This young girl means that only if I establish some merit for them will they be able to bring me into the Purple Mansion realm cultivator's fold. I see. So this is one of those complex customs of the Easterners." He appeared visibly relieved, managing an awkward smile as he nodded. "If your clan ever needs anything, do not hesitate to ask me." Li Qinghong saw that he had understood her intentions. Despite his years of cultivation, Fei Luoya was somewhat inexperienced in dealing with people, but his cautious demeanor revealed his keen awareness. Now that he had received a tentative commitment, Fei Luoya seemed noticeably more relaxed and had little patience for further conversation. Waving his hand, he said casually, "I am getting closer to the late foundation establishment realm, and am focusing on refining my cultivation in preparation for a breakthrough. I will not be staying here any longer. In a few days, I will send Xu Xiao to discuss any further details with you all." With that, he left without looking back, riding the wind away. Li Qinghong escorted him to the edge of her family's territory, reflecting to herself, "This old Mount Yue cultivator grows stronger with each passing year. For now, it's best to stall him with this delay tactic. As for the Purple Mansion realm cultivator, I'll discuss it with my brother once he returns to decide how best to handle it." Chapter 551, Setting Out I. Fei Luoya departed, hands clasped behind his back as he rode the wind, leaving the others with a relaxed view of his retreating figure. Li Qinghong had managed to appease him, and with Li Ximing and the other Foundation Establishment realm cultivators filling the ranks, everyone dispersed, scratching their heads in bewilderment. Li Qinghong returned to her senses and saw that only Li Wushao remained, his expression more troubled than. The wound on his tail stinger had yet to heal, prompting her to ask, "Is your injury serious?" Li Wushao's hooked tail had been singed by a gray-red flame, leaving a pain that lingered both in his body and in his spiritual sense. Occasionally it would flare up, and the discomfort left him looking visibly pained. Li Qinghong noticed this and inquired out of concern. Li Wushao waved his hand and replied, "Thank you for your concern, my lady. This flame appears to be merging fire, which merges body and spirit, harms one's essence, and even burns away lifespan, affecting the mind. All I can do is rest and recuperate." His face was pale as he declined the medicinal pill Li Qinghong offered him, explaining politely, "Ordinary pills are ineffective against this sacred fire. During my time in the Eastern Sea, several dragons tried to devour me. They cultivate in the converging water method, which, like merging fire, worsens injuries over time with even the slightest contact. I am used to it by now and have some experience in dealing with it, so there is no need to worry." With a grim expression, Li Wushao withdrew to heal, leaving Li Qinghong alone to descend on thunder. Converging water, merging fire, supreme yin and yang, they really do correspond one-to-one. Li Qinghong nodded thoughtfully. Many manifestations of metallic essence had corresponding fruition attainments with identifiable traits. She wondered about the nature of her own profound thunderpool cultivation. Profound thunder, or perhaps some kind of celestial thunder. Shaking these thoughts from her mind, Li Qinghong retreated into seclusion to train. Half a month passed, and though Fei Luoya's subordinate, Xu Xiao, had yet to arrive, finally a group of travelers appeared in the distant sky. They were dressed in various robes and looked worn from their journey. Leading them was Li Xijun, who was tugging at his beard as he rode the wind from afar. "Granduncle." Li Xijun soared up to greet him, and Li Xijun nodded slightly. Behind him, Chen Dong and Zhayan bowed in greeting. Li Xijun seemed to be in good spirits and said, "This old man went to Great Jueting Temple and broadened his horizons significantly. That temple oversees 72 Dao lineages, preserving all kinds of ancient and shamanic spells, vastly different from modern techniques." He reached into his storage pouch and drew out a few talismans. They appeared grayish with white ink symbols scrawled across them, and Li Xijun beamed as he explained, "These are ancient spell talismans, infused with water essence to relieve pain and heal ailments. They will be quite useful to pass down to cultivators in the embryonic breathing realm and to treat common folk." As he spoke, he waved his hand and the crowd dispersed. Li Xijun guided him down, while Li Xijun continued speaking cheerfully about the talismans in his hand. Li Xijun's old eyes swept across the mountain, and he glimpsed the white mourning clothes draped everywhere. A momentary joy vanished from his face, which was replaced by shock. His smile disappeared and he fell silent. Without a word, he allowed Li Xijun to lead him to the grave, where he sat heavily on the ground, murmuring to himself, "So it is time." He managed to hold on all these years. His aged eyes took in the surrounding area. To his right stood the headstone of his eldest son, Li Yuanxiu, and to his left his youngest, Li Yuanping. One was new, the other old, and both towered above him. Sitting between them, the gravestones loomed taller than he was. Li Xijun withdrew quietly, retreating to the edge of the mountain path before glancing back. The elderly man was slumped between the two graves, his legs spread in the wild grass, clutching one of the talismans in his hand without realizing it, and he was staring blankly at the sky with an expression of utter smallness, and unmistakable grief. Li Xijun could not bear to look on any longer and lowered his head as he left. Chen Dong led a person up the path, a man in a brown Taoist robe with a vine whip tied at his waist. Chen Dong spoke softly. "This is Senior Xu Xiao." Li Xijun quickly composed himself. The earlier scene still lingered vividly in his memory, but he had no time to dwell on it. Forcing a smile, he greeted Xu Xiao in a soft tone. "Greetings, Senior." Xu Xiao, one of Fei Luoya's men, had just reached the early foundation establishment realm. His cultivation lineage was weak, and although he had established an immortal foundation, he was still inferior to even Li Wushao before he had gained his hooked tail. The skill he cultivated, pure essence wind, was an ordinary technique formed of minor pure spiritual qi. Despite having a higher cultivation level than Li Xijun, Xu Xiao dared not act superior in his presence and spoke softly. "My senior brother has sent me here to coordinate the handover of the territory." Fei Luoya's subordinates controlled a substantial amount of land. Although some barren areas at the edges were disregarded, the actual area was significantly larger than eastern Mount Yue. As Li Xijun watched him spread out the map, Xu Xiao remarked, "Over these past 10 or so years, my territory here has developed a population of just over 50,000. Li Xijun immediately felt a pang of surprise. On similar territory, their own eastern Mount Yue had a population numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Such a small population in Xu Xian's territory explained the lack of productivity. Glancing over the map and estimating briefly, he said softly, "For this region, Senior, I propose establishing 30 towns, strategically placed along the land's spirit and earth veins. We can set up 1 or 2 immortal mountains and establish a governing system to oversee a population of 300,000. There are 2 large plains here where we can establish major towns. Then we can begin by setting up villages along the 2 rivers and gradually move people there." As Li Xijun explained his plan in detail, Xu Xiao could only nod in agreement, not entirely grasping the pros and cons or understanding much of what was being discussed. Once Li Xijun had arranged everything from start to finish, there was not much left to negotiate. Xu Xiao had only one question. "How much profit can this yield?" he asked. Li Xijun calculated and answered, "After 7 or 8 years, annual profits could reach around 20 to 30 spirit stones, with our family taking a 40% share." After doing the math, Xu Xiao realized that this would meet Fei Luoya's expectations. He relaxed immediately, waving his hand in agreement. "Then let us proceed with that." Li Xijun then called Li Zicheng over for a thorough discussion. Xu Xiao, unable to sit still any longer, rode the wind back to report to Fei Luoya. Once Xu Xiao had left, Li Xijun asked, "Elder brother, how much does our family have in reserves now?" Li Zicheng replied, "Currently, we generate an annual income of over 60 spirit stones. After deducting the tribute payments, we can save less than 100 stones every 5 years. Adding in the 40 stones from the sale of wanling blossoms by Han Shizhen of the Han family, our savings come to about 130 spirit stones every 5 years. After calculating for a bit, Li Zicheng continued, "For the past decade, we have avoided major expenses, so we have about 200 stones in reserve after accounting for minor expenditures. 200 spirit stones, that is more than enough to set up 2 Qi cultivation realm formations. And since we are establishing these for Fei Luoya, we may even be able to extract some resources from his side." With confidence in his plan, Li Xijun nodded and spoke softly, "Elder brother, the expansion effort will need your coordination. We could consider moving eastern Mount Yue westward, transferring the original 12 towns on the eastern side to be under Li Jing office. You have the insight to handle it as you see fit. Rest assured." Li Zicheng's reply was steady and composed, carrying an air of authority. However, as his gaze passed over the white mourning garments, a lingering sorrow remained in his eyes. Chapter 552, Setting Out II. Li Xuanfeng gathered his belongings, stepped onto his flying shuttle, and with 2 Ning family cultivators in tow, set off with his golden bow slung over his back. They flew gracefully toward the Azure Pond sect. The 2 Ning family members, having grown accustomed to traveling with him, used the journey to brief him on the clans of the nearby prefectures. These 2 brothers were from a branch of the Ning family and had followed Li Xuanfeng for over a decade, deeply respecting him. Li Xuanfeng listened absently, uninterested in lingering along the way. They glided over the landscape, arriving at the Azure Pond sect where he instructed them, "Go ahead and gather all those who are heading to the Eastern Sea." He waited patiently. According to the practices of the Azure Pond sect, most of those being sent to guard the Eastern Sea were likely cultivators with limited talents. Aside from members of the Kai and Ning families, disciples from Yuan Su, Yuanwu, and Yuan Ziu's peaks were often assigned to the southern borders or the eastern sea. He waited for a while, choosing not to enter the mountain. Instead, he seated himself in a pavilion, watching the mist drift across Mount Azure Pond. After a short time, he heard a commotion as the two Ning family members returned, leading a group of cultivators. The group of young men and women wore azure Taoist robes. Most of them were at the Qi cultivation realm, their faces filled with the fresh inexperience of novices. They lined up behind the two Ning family members and called out in unison, "Greetings, Taoist." Within the Azure Pond sect, those who held the title of Peak Master at the Foundation Establishment realm were addressed as Peak Masters. If they lacked this title, they were simply called Taoists after all. Within the Azure Pond sect, Foundation Establishment realm alone was not enough to earn the title of an ancestor. Li Xuanfeng found this a little strange. Years ago, his family had treated disciples from Azure Pond sect with the utmost respect, not daring to defy them. He recalled his visit to Cloud Crown Peak of the Xiao family back then, where even a mere sect attendant could command a small clan's family head at will. Back then, he had been a lowly archer, serving under the sect's disciples. Now, he had become a senior to the very members of Azure Pond, which made him chuckle quietly as he gave them a slight nod. To the embryonic breathing and Qi cultivation realm disciples, however, Li Xuanfeng in his black gold spirit armor was an awe-inspiring sight. His armor's elegant lines and fierce expression, with eyes sharp as a hawk, seemed to emit a golden glow. Combined with the ferocious longbow hanging from his golden robe, his imposing presence was undeniable. Just by standing there, he exuded the aura of a veteran general who had guarded the wild borders for years. His slightly hoarse voice and commanding gaze added to his formidable image, with the gleam of his golden bow making the eyes of onlookers ache. I heard this senior was born with immense strength, able to wrestle tigers and wolves. He comes from a distinguished sword-wielding clan, yet chose to abandon the sword and master the golden bow instead, single-handedly dispersing the clouds of demons in the southern border. The young disciples whispered among themselves, filled with admiration for the man. Even though they were members of an immortal sect, Foundation Establishment realm was still an uncertain achievement for many. With fierce internal competition and frequent assignments to guard distant territories, becoming someone of Li Xuanfeng's stature was no small feat. Li Xuanfeng scanned the group. Once he saw that everyone had gathered, he tapped the golden beast buckle on his belt and took out a jade ship. Initially the size of a thumb, the spirit shuttle expanded rapidly, glowing with emerald light until it transformed into a great boat over 10 zhang in length. It floated gently in the air, the ever-flowing jade cloudliner. The boat was not Li Xuanfeng's possession, rather Ningwan had loaned it to him. When she had heard that he had no means of transport, she had provided the ship for him to carry the dozen or so disciples across Yue State. Since she was in seclusion cultivating her divine abilities, she had no immediate need for it and was happy to lend it to him. The Azure Pond disciples, accustomed to seeing spirit ships, showed little surprise as they boarded. The ship was spacious enough, and the two Ning family brothers took it upon themselves to pilot it. Li Xuanfeng stood at the front of the vessel, gazing down at the sea of clouds and peaks below. If only I did not have these people with me, I would not need to delay. I have to finish my current task before I can return home for a visit. Otherwise, I would have stopped by the Lake Xian area to drop by home. He watched the clouds part and gather, light and shadow shifting as they crossed over Mount Qingdu and reached Libu Prefecture. The elder Ning brother at the front called out, "General, up ahead is Wubu Market." Li Xuanfeng understood what he meant. His grandnephew Li Xijun was stationed there as the local guardian. However, with all the disciples on board, stopping casually could cause misunderstandings, so he replied, "Keep going, no need to stop." Yes, they obeyed and continued steering the spirit ship, while Li Xuanfeng began to adjust his breathing and focus. He cultivated the golden light edge technique, a grade 3 technique obtained from the Jai family, which was practiced by a branch of the Situ family. Compared to techniques passed down among the main lineages of the immortal sects, it was somewhat lacking. After reaching Foundation Establishment realm, however, Ning Hemian had acquired a grade 4 manual for him from within the sect, called Golden Stone Lofty Skies Technique. It allowed him to cultivate to the peak of the Foundation Establishment realm, significantly speeding up his progress. Yet since he had already formed his immortal foundation, he still could not match those who had fully cultivated the Golden Stone Lofty Skies technique from the start. Li Xuanfeng was rather indifferent about it. His immortal foundation had already been refined to its utmost limits, so a little more or less made no difference. The engraved stone Dao foundation came from the Golden Tang Gate, with qi that could break through formations, split mountains, and destroy enemy artifacts. It specialized in targeting weaknesses, with its power growing stronger with each life taken, tempered by the blood qi of his fallen enemies. And over the decades, Li Xuanfeng had slain countless foes in the southern border. He had suffered many wounds in his early years, but with this spirit armor, he had become even more formidable. The number of Foundation establishment realm cultivators who had fallen by his hand had long since entered the double digits. In his Qihai acupoint, a chaotic golden-red light swirled. He had refined it to its limit 2 years ago, reaching a point where further refinement was impossible. His confidence came from this source, a confidence grounded in hard-won strength. Taoist Master Yuan Su promoted me likely because of this, he thought to himself. Over the years, Li Xuanfeng had gained insight into Taoist Master Yuan Su's intentions. Ning Tianxiao needed someone among the Foundation establishment realm cultivators who was strong enough to crush any minor threats, someone who could handle matters that he himself found inconvenient to attend to. This Foundation establishment realm cultivator not only needed to be exceptionally powerful and loyal, but also had to be without prospects for advancement, with weaknesses Yuan Su could exploit. And perhaps even be willing to sacrifice themselves in a critical moment. Taoist Master Yuan Su was cunning to the core a master strategist. He had discerned Li Xuanfeng's character perfectly, not only marrying him to a woman from the clan, but also placing members of the Ning family around him, either as subordinates or as colleagues. The Ning family members themselves did not fully realize it, yet they had already come to care for him genuinely. After all, he is a cultivator of several hundred years. His methods are impeccable. He does not need divine abilities or spells to manipulate people. Clad in the black gold armor that his wife had sought for him, Li Xuanfeng stood quietly, gazing deeply at the setting sun descending in front of him. "Boss, we are leaving the prefecture." The elder Ning brother, his forehead slightly sweaty, turned around and grinned, flashing a set of white teeth. His younger brother looked up at Li Xuanfeng with a shy but admiring gaze. "Got it," Li Xuanfeng replied. The Ning brothers kept the ship steady, calling him general and boss with utmost loyalty. Li Xuanfeng was not easily deceived, and for years he had harbored doubts that these two were sent to monitor him. However, after several times when they had risked their lives to protect him, he had come to see them as his own people. Now, as long as Li Xuanfeng could not in good conscience abandon his wife and subordinates, Yuan Su's purpose had been fulfilled. Surveying his surroundings, Li Xuanfeng saw loyalty to his clan, his wife, and his duty. There was no other path forward but to serve Yuan Su. Chapter 553, Crossing Lake Xian. Li Xuanfeng crossed borders on his conspicuous jade ship and soon entered the territory of the Profound Peak Gate. While the Azure Pond sect had its own coastal access, the path to the eastern sea through Profound Peaks Lake Xian was far closer to Splintered Island. Going through the southern exit of Azure Pond sect would involve a long detour, so Li Xuanfeng had opted to travel through Profound Peak sect's land instead. As Shanji Prefecture, controlled by Profound Peak Gate, came into view, a white barrier appeared before them. Li Xuanfeng halted the jade ship, and soon a Profound Peak disciple rode the wind up to greet them. He displayed utmost courtesy as he asked softly, "May I ask, Senior?" The elder Ning brother stepped forward and replied, "From Azure Pond, escorting disciples to Splintered Island." Li Xuanfeng took a step forward, tapped his belt, and a jade token shot out from the beast head buckle, radiating a brilliant light in mid. The Profound Peak disciple, an elderly man dressed in white with well-defined features and moles on each cheek, was adorned with various jade accessories. Bowing respectfully, he said hurriedly, "Junior Kongyu greets Senior. Please follow me to the lake." His deference was evident as he led the way, sneaking glances at Li Xuanfeng with a hint of hesitation before stammering, "Is this Senior? Could you be the famed golden bowstring of the southern border?" "You match the description so closely." Li Xuanfeng was not surprised to be recognized so easily and nodded slightly. Kongyu instantly grew excited, exclaiming, "Senior, I am Kongyu of Profound Peak. Our gate has long been allied with the Li family. I even visited Moongaze Lake to help Qingdu relocate a mountain. I am quite close with Taoist Xuanxuan." Li Xuanfeng raised an eyebrow in mild surprise, his expression softening significantly as he responded gently, "Oh. My elder brother." A faint smile appeared on Li Xuanfeng's face as he asked, "I have not seen him in many years. How is my elder brother doing these days?" "Well, he is quite well." Under Li Xuanfeng's gaze, Kongyu felt a sudden pang of nervousness. After 2 hasty replies, he elaborated, "Taoist Xuanxuan has reached late-stage Qi cultivation realm and has grown more adept with talismans. He has never been much for combat, but his skills in talisman arts are increasingly profound. We traveled west together back then, discussing so much along the way. I learned a great deal," Kongyu murmured as Li Xuanfeng looked off into the distance, listening quietly. Kongyu, digging through his memory, suddenly remembered another detail and quickly added, "And I heard that your clan even went overseas and along with Profound Peak's Foundation establishment realm cultivators, launched a counterattack on Situ Mo, nearly obliterating that monk from the wrathful Dao lineage." "A counterattack, Situ Mo, a Golden Tang Gate disciple," Li Xuanfeng repeated as he frowned. The southern border was often cut off from outside news. Xuanfeng, though he had received one update from home through Liu Changdi, knew little overall. Most of his information came through Ning family channels. The Ning family was effective at gathering news, but they could not uncover everything, especially the more private matters. Kong Yu, on the other hand, had heard this news through Kong Tingyun, which explained why Li Xuanfeng had been unaware. Li Xuanfeng's interest was instantly piqued as he caught on to the essential details and asked further, prompting Kong Yu to relay what he had learned from Kong Tingyun. Yes, a Golden Tang Gate disciple. Apparently, Situ Mo somehow incurred your family's wrath and colluded with the wrathful Dao lineage in the north, setting an ambush for your family's younger members. Fortunately, the Li family's foundation establishment realm experts arrived in time, preventing any mishap. Kong Yu continued, later, when your family needed to go to the Eastern Sea, they teamed up with our foundation establishment realm cultivator, Kong Tingyun, for the journey. It just so happened that they encountered those two on the way, and in the ensuing battle, that monk. Kong Yu summarized the event. When he described Situ Mo's ambush, Li Xuanfeng's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of anger lighting up his gaze. By the time Kong Yu finished, however, Li Xuanfeng's expression had settled into a quiet calm, revealing no trace of emotion as he murmured evenly, "How bold." Though spoken softly, his tone sent a chill through Kong Yu, who watched as Li Xuanfeng asked, "Is Situ Mo currently in the Eastern Sea?" "He is indeed." Kong Yu nodded eagerly, pleased with himself as he responded, "He is on Golden Sack Island in the Scarlet Pristine Sea. Just head east from here, and you will find it easily with a few inquiries." Li Xuanfeng nodded, standing with his hands clasped behind him with his black gold spirit armor gleaming in the sunlight, his robes billowing around him. A few names crossed his mind, and he muttered coldly, "Situ Mo Guo Hongyao." It would be best if they stayed hidden in Yue State or on Crimson Reef Island, because if I catch them in the Eastern Sea, they will learn the true taste of being pierced by thousands of arrows from head to toe. As murderous intent surged in his heart, the old man before him, Kong Yu, felt a chilling sensation as though his face were being slashed by knives. Terrified, he dared not speak. As for Kong Yu, he is clearly using me as a blade here. Li Xuanfeng glanced briefly at the old man, though he was not particularly concerned. These enemies were shared adversaries, and this news was useful. Li Xuanfeng knew exactly how to handle it. For Li Xuanxuan's sake, he remained courteous, though even this restrained glance left Kong Yu visibly uneasy. The old man quickly tried to amend his words, adding, "But Situ Mo is a core disciple of the Golden Tang Gate. Regardless of his strength, it would be unwise to cause too much trouble. If you intend to deal with him, senior, a light punishment may be best." Li Xuanfeng nodded as he leaned on the edge of the ship, conversing politely yet absently. As they left Lake Xian, Kong Yu finally bid them farewell. "This is as far as this old man will escort you. The rest of your journey is your own." "Thank you, fellow Taoist," replied the elder Ning brother, nodding in acknowledgement. Seeing Kong Yu's familiarity with Li Xuanfeng, he remained polite as Kong Yu turned away, sweat beading on his brow as he flew off, thinking to himself that was close. Li Xuanfeng and Li Xuanxuan are like night and day. How can they even be brothers? They are worlds apart. To Kong Yu, Li Xuanxuan was like a mild, aging rabbit, though easily startled by even the slightest stir. He was serious, easy to talk to, and lacked any intimidating presence. They had not spent long together, but Kong Yu had felt a genuine sense of rapport, understanding the man well. Li Xuanfeng, however, was like a hawk, polite on the surface but brimming with a fierce edge. Especially when the topic of Situ Mo's ambush on Li family juniors had come up, a single flicker of Li Xuanfeng's gaze had felt like a blade cutting across his face. If he were merely a lone eagle, it might not be so concerning. But this man has endured the bitter winds of the southern border for decades, sharpening his claws to razor edges. Besides, he has built himself a nest within the mighty Ning family. He's truly terrifying. Watching the Emerald Jade ship disappear into the distance, Kong Yu thought quietly, in less than 10 years, Yue State will be buzzing with tales of this great eagle. 3 generations back to back. The Li family truly has people of talent. No wonder they are thriving. Returning to his peak on the wind, deep in thought, Kong Yu hurried to rummage through his storage and pulled out a talisman, tracing it with meticulous detail. "Oh right, I should let Tingyun know. She might be able to find a way to establish contact with the Li family. It would be best if they could push Situ Mo back to Yue State. This would also be a good opportunity to earn the Li family's favor." The old man, well over a century in age and adept in such matters, quickly recorded his message in the talisman and called someone over. "Go, deliver this to Yuzhu Island." Chapter 554, The Hornless and True Dragon Eye. Li Xuanfeng led the group across Lake Xian, finally arriving at the coastal waters. The waves surged as the sea stretched in endless blue, and Ning Dingbo, the elder Ning brother, stepped forward to gather the disciples. Once the Azure Pond disciples had assembled, Ning Dingbo flashed a smile, revealing his white teeth as he explained, "This area is called the Shallow Sea. The water here is not very deep. It got submerged during the great battles of ancient times. Most of the islands you see now were once immortal mountains, while the remaining few were later transported here to fill the sea. Li Xuanfeng stood with his hands behind his back, listening silently. Understanding his nature, Ning Dingbo continued with the introduction on his behalf. In those days, this area was home to the 6 most densely populated southern prefectures, all of which were swallowed by the sea, leaving ruins beneath the waves. Since the water is shallow, cultivators have already scoured it clean over the years. Ning Dingbo continued to explain patiently. If you travel further toward the Scarlet Pristine Sea and the Qinghong Gorge, you will reach what was once the Eastern Sea. Dragon palaces cover the landscape, with flood dragons and serpents roaming freely. Going deeper, you will encounter many dragon kin. Do not offend them. The disciples reacted with mixed expressions. Those dressed in fine robes seemed unaffected, already familiar with this knowledge, while the more simply dressed disciples looked enlightened. Ning Dingbo continued, the Scarlet Pristine Sea was named after the 8th child of the true hornless dragon, which involves the ancient pristine converging water. The sea is filled with demons and treasures, most of which are controlled by the dragon kin. If you go in, proceed with caution. A young man with a finely tailored robe and slender brows suddenly spoke up, respectfully asking, "May I ask, instructor, why is it that, while the ruling beings here are of the dragon kin and hold the converging water fruition attainment, it is referred to as the true hornless dragon? Why not call it the hornless dragon?" Well, Ning Dingbo hesitated, casting a reluctant glance at Li Xuanfeng before shaking his head, replying gravely, "That is an ancient matter. Few would know the answer." The group looked slightly disappointed, but then Li Xuanfeng stepped forward and spoke softly. If not for the pristine converging water, the true hornless dragon would have become a true dragon. Having spent years in the southern border, Li Xuanfeng had come across 1 or 2 of these ancient secrets. He knew that Li Xijun had fallen victim to an old flood dragon in the southern border, so whenever he encountered snake or flood dragon-type demons in battle, he always tried to capture them alive and interrogate them for any information about the old flood dragon. This old flood dragon, a well-known demon king in the southern border, was named Sen Lufu and cultivated the divine ability of pristine water. Supposedly also of dragon kin, Li Xuanfeng himself had harbored the same question as the young disciple, and he had eventually uncovered the answer through careful questioning. As he began to speak, the young disciples looked up to him in admiration. The refined young man appeared somewhat bashful as he respectfully requested, "Taoist, may I trouble you for your explanation?" Li Xuanfeng replied softly, "The true hornless dragon dominated the Eastern Sea, achieving fruition attainment for hundreds of years, and reportedly reached the peak of the Tao embryo realm. It believed itself to be the most perfect creature under heaven, and called itself the Demon Emperor, establishing the Eastern Sea Demon Palace. It journeyed westward until it reached a small mountain temple and encountered an immortal lord." Li Xuanfeng continued, "The true hornless dragon asked, 'Is there any creature under heaven with a form more perfect than my own?' The immortal lord replied, 'The dragon kin rise and fall in size, soaring through the universe, diving beneath waves and transforming with the times. You are merely a demon dragon. You must transform into a true dragon.'" Li Xuanfeng paused, then continued softly. The hornless dragon carefully questioned the immortal lord about the characteristics of true dragon kin, then returned to the Eastern Sea, gathering forces and consuming a feathered serpent. With 2 fruition attainments in one body, it was impossible to manage both converging water and pristine water simultaneously. It eventually met a hasty end, its powers divided among its 9 offspring, throwing the Eastern Sea into turmoil and an era of extreme chaos. Li Xuanfeng gazed into the distance, a hint of reverence in his voice as he added quietly, "Only then did the world's demons understand the difference between the hornless and true dragon, as well as those between flood dragons, snakes, and vipers, knowledge that later spread from the dragon palace itself. The hornless dragon may have been devoured by its 9 offspring, but its descendants now call themselves dragonkin and have established the Eastern Sea Serpent Dragon Palace." As Li Xuanfeng finished relating the story, not only were the disciples in awe, but even the Ning brothers were hearing this for the first time, marveling at the tale. Li Xuanfeng shook his head. "It is just a tale spun from the mouth of a mere snake. Take it as a story for entertainment." "Thank you, Taoist, for your teaching," the disciples said in unison as they respectfully offered their thanks. Li Xuanfeng waved it off, his eyes glinting with a cold light as he stared at the shadow approaching on the northern wind, murmuring, "Speak of the devil, here they come." Indeed, 2 streaks of light approached in the distance, one large and one small. The creature in the lead was snake-like, with a twin-hooked tail and a pale white hue, trailing a streak of blood across the sky. The one following closely behind it was nearly twice as large and was covered in bluish-gray scales, with a body resembling a tiger's but with an unusually elongated torso and belly, gliding in a prowling stance. The bluish-gray creature had 4 strong legs, with an elongated torso and a long tail trailing behind, giving it an unusual appearance. It followed the white snake ahead of it with an air of ease, almost like a cat toying with a mouse. Ning Dingbo glanced over and quickly directed his brother to steer the jade ship further away, lowering his voice as he said, "That is a dragon scion. Quickly move away. Do not disturb it." Li Xuanfeng studied the scene closely. The creature in front seemed to be of the feathered serpent clan with a twin-hooked tail. It was likely a hooked serpent. Its scales were broken, blood that was a pale blue hue dripped from its body, and its window-sized eyes were filled with despair, emitting pitiful howls. It looks like it has been injured by converging water. Even if it escapes, it will not live much longer. Everyone watched, entranced, as the Ning brothers hastened to put distance between them and the scene. Yet they could not help but look back in curiosity as the dragon scion closed in on the white hooked serpent, delaying the kill to toy with it instead. Ning Dingbo's expression shifted slightly, muttering a quiet curse and silently quickening their pace, thinking to himself, truly typical of dragon kin. The converging water lineage loves playing such games. Regardless of kin, they always have to test each other. The group of cultivators watched the scene with rapt attention, awestruck, as the hooked serpent wailed miserably. After a few breaths, a faint green rain began to fall from the sky. The rain was translucent and a delicate shade of blue-greenish hue. Though its color was light, it drenched the area and cast the world into a misty haze. A finely dressed young disciple activated his mana to shield himself, remarking, "This is the vision of a fallen converging water foundation establishment realm." So this is the Eastern Sea, where a foundation establishment realm expert can fall on any stretch of ocean just like that. Li Xuanfeng, meanwhile, was reflecting on the aura and appearance of the dragon scion they had just seen, thinking to himself, indeed, they are unique. The dragon kin of the Eastern Sea must have various spells at their disposal. Defeating them would likely be no easy task. If I could lure one into a wide enough sea area, perhaps I could exhaust it to death. Naturally, he would not provoke a dragon kin, but he was calculating the strength of both sides, forming a solid understanding of the two. Ning Dingbo moved a step closer and whispered, "Boss, I doubt that Dragon Scion's appearance here is just a coincidence. It is likely here to see who Azure Pond has sent to oversee Spleetered Island." Li Xuanfeng nodded slightly. His task was not only to escort, but also to stay on the island for a year or so to manage affairs. Spleetered Island's situation was complicated, so a Dragon Scion's curiosity was understandable. Chapter 555, The Hornless and True Dragon II. As one of the largest markets in the sea and one of the most prominent immortal islands, Spleetered Island housed many natural resources. Its unusual terrain made it difficult to set up formations, leading to constant unrest. And for reasons unknown, Purple Mansion Realm cultivators rarely appeared in the area. Each sect avoided assigning a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator for oversight, relying mostly on Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. Li Xuanfeng gave his assent. Soon, the majestic island appeared before them as the Ning brothers introduced the island's background while steering the ship down toward the water. About 10 li from Spleetered Island, a massive light shield shimmered across the seabed. Li Xuanfeng produced a jade token and guided them through the barrier. The scene below was indeed radiant, with houses of all sizes nestled within the shimmering barrier. As the Ning brothers docked the jade ship, a cultivator approached them on a gust of wind. Dressed in a green robe, the approaching man's storage pouch and sword glinted in the sun. His cloak was made of spirit silk, his robe of spirit cloth, and even the jade adorning him was of the highest grade, truly extravagant. He glanced at Li Xuanfeng and nodded, greeting, brother-in-law. This man was Ning Heiyuan, his wife's younger brother and the authority over the market on the island. With early-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivation, he was not unfamiliar to Li Xuanfeng, who gave him a brief nod in acknowledgement. Ning Heiyuan was of the main Ning family line, but he had been taken in by the Kai family at a young age and returned to the Ning family only upon reaching adulthood. His position in the Ning family leaned more toward the Kai lineage. However, with Kai Wei's death and Taoist master Yuan Su relocating to Yi Mountain City, many of the Ning family had shifted their focus to the southern territories. Even though Kai Jian was the sect leader, he dared not give orders to a senior like Yuan Su, who now acted independently in the southern border without taking directives or heeding summons. This slight rift between the Ning and Kai families had placed Ning Heiyuan in an awkward position. Li Xuanfeng had met him once more than 10 years ago when he had been quite boastful. However, after hiding out at sea for over a decade, he now seemed far more subdued in character. Bringing along several guest cultivators for introductions, Ning Heiyuan quickly assigned tasks to the disciples and then pulled Li Xuanfeng aside, saying, "Brother-in-law, this is my first time working with you directly. If there is anything I overlook, please guide me." Li Xuanfeng found his attitude somewhat unexpected and gave a polite nod. Ning Heiyuan led him to his cave dwelling, explaining that he needed to meet with some of the disciples before departing. Meanwhile, Li Xuanfeng wrote a letter and handed it to the elder Ning brother to be delivered to the Li family, Great Jueting. This was an ancient city, grand and majestic. At its height, it had a population of 100,000, but under Fu Demu's rule for several decades, only about 10,000 remained. Fei Loya had reclaimed it, and after years of nurturing, had restored the population to 30 or 40,000. The stone bricks of the old city were mottled with the marks of time, and Li family soldiers hurried through the narrow streets. The Mount Yue townsfolk hid inside their houses, peeking out with hope in their eyes. Just as the people of eastern Mount Yue envied the prosperous lives of the Easterners, the inhabitants of Great Jueting longed for the affluence of eastern Mount Yue. Having heard of the Li family's reputation, they now eagerly anticipated the Li family's takeover. Clan cultivators and jade court guards patrolled the skies, while Li Zicheng rode the wind with his younger brother Li Xijun by his side. They both studied a map, deep in discussion. The Liu and Su families cannot be allowed on new lands. As for those from the prestigious family, it would be best to restrict them and promote common families to settle along the western lakes and establish villages. Fei Loya had chosen to take a hands-off approach, handing over his territory to the Li family before entering secluded cultivation. The Li family had sent people to inspect the area twice, discovering that it was divided into two major sections. One part was Mount Yue's grand city of Great Jueting, a rare ruin with a vast expanse, while the other was a fertile plain with no significant mountains. The Li family focused their efforts on the ancient city of Great Jueting, an old and distinguished place within Mount Yue, second only to Mount Wu. Li Yuanjiao had visited it once, but his attention had been consumed with dividing the spoils of war, so he had not been able to take a closer look. As the two juniors explored, they found it rich in age-old elegance. The palace walls still bore many murals, though most had been damaged by years of warfare. Some still depicted scenes of cataclysms, darkness, and despair. Li Xijun stepped inside, admiring the artwork. The recent murals depicted the rise of the Li family, the east bursting with blossoms and the brightness of flames atop oil. But as he moved deeper, the murals took on a bleaker tone, showing fields overrun with locusts, drought in every direction, foreign invasions, and the death of the king. Li Xijun paused to look, then turned back and commented, "This must be the legendary giant Xi." The two brothers continued through the palace halls, passing one scene after another of the heavens collapsing and landscapes withering, only to later reach depictions of people thriving and living in abundance. The later murals were worn beyond recognition, but after searching for a while, they found another complete one. This mural depicted a figure dressed in black whose face was obscured. In one hand, they held an object resembling a book, while in the other, a staff. Many people were painted kneeling before this figure, while beside them, a sun hung in the sky, casting its light downward. That must be Duanmu Qi. Both Li Zicheng and Li Xijun were familiar with their family's history and many recorded stories. Li Xijun remarked, Duanmu Qi dominated his era, even daring to suppress the gates of Azure Pond sect, but in the end he could not break through to the Golden Core realm, and that immortal text he possessed vanished without a trace, with no clues left to its whereabouts. As for the sun, Li Xijun paused, then sighed. Perhaps it has something to do with the Weili lineage. He had complex feelings about Weili. Many Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, including some Purple Mansion realm cultivators, had assumed that the Li family was of the direct line of Weili. Li Xuanfeng had passed along information, and Li Xijun had done his own research, forming some theories. Taoist Master Yuan Su believed our family to be of Weili blood. If the Purple Mansion realm cultivators' divine abilities are accurate, then we are indeed descended from Weili. Which explains the family's numerous connections to monks, but as for whether we are direct descendants, that is hard to say. Li Xijun knew the truth about his family. Despite the recent streak of exceptional Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, he understood that it was not due to their bloodline. The Li family's rapid cultivation progress was primarily due to the talisman seeds each main branch member possessed, which accelerated their cultivation speed. They had also received multiple boosts from talismans and a talisman pill, creating an aura of distinction around them. Piecing these insights together, Li Xijun quickly came to a conclusion. Our family is likely a side branch of Weili, merely appearing as direct descendants due to the support of these immortal artifacts, thus attracting such complex connections. As he pondered these thoughts, he gazed at the grand and unadorned palace, then stopped and turned around abruptly. "Elder brother, I will return for now. The rest is in your hands." Li Zicheng, puzzled but compliant, nodded, while Li Xijun took to the wind and rode swiftly back to Mount Qingdu, entering the ancestral shrine. Activating the protective formation, he stepped into the hidden chamber. The altar of cold iron emitted a faint glow, carved with osmanthus patterns that added a mysterious, serene air. Li Xijun bowed deeply and spoke with respect. I, Xijun, the descendant of the Li family, humbly request the mirror to pierce through the mysteries, perceive the hidden truth, and illuminate all directions, capturing spirits and discerning the divine. Li Xijun had observed the supposedly ordinary Great Jueting, which, despite the multiple inspections by Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, seemed to reveal nothing remarkable. He thought to himself, the immortal mirror should reveal something different. Chapter 556, The Appearance of Radiant Origin Pass I. Li Xijun rode the wind and then descended in the Great Jueting. He slowly closed his eyes and with a calm focus connected his spiritual sense to the exalted immortal mirror. Through it, the entire Great Jueting soon came into clear view. He scanned the palace curtains, finding that nothing was out of the ordinary. Beneath the throne, there was a hidden passage that had been reinforced with protective formations. It had once been used by the kings of Mount Yue to escape, though it had been emptied out long ago when Mount Yue's army arrived at the mountain. There was nothing there now. Perhaps I've overthought it. Li Xijun continued scanning the place and discovered several secret chambers belonging to Mount Yue's cultivators. A few embryonic breathing realm spirit items were carefully hidden away in these rooms. Given the current state of the Li family, these were of little interest to him. Several elders had visited here with a mirror in the past. If there had been any treasures, they would have found them long ago. It's no surprise there's nothing here now. Though that was what he believed, Li Xijun had always been thorough in his task. His eyes continued to roam, and he carefully examined the northern slope of the Great Jueting. Since the immortal mirror is with me now, I might as well take a closer look. It'd be wonderful if I could find one or two spirit waters or treasured panaceas. The Li family had never thoroughly explored this forest before. It was sparsely populated by demonic beasts, so finding a spirit item or two was a real possibility. Li Xijun spent most of the day meticulously searching through the expanse, and eventually something unusual caught his eye. Within the dense forest, he used the immortal mirror to probe through the overlapping rocks. Suddenly, he spotted a dark and shadowy area. Stalactites hung from above and were shimmering with specks of light, and a turbulent, winding river flowed beneath it. It was an underground river. Beside the river stood a massive rock, its vermilion surface glowing brightly. It was connected to a palm-sized, golden diamond-shaped stone that was radiating a soft, colorful light. A treasure. Li Xijun had initially been searching for a treasured panacea, but even though he did not recognize the object in front of him, it clearly looked like something of great value. Li Xijun landed unhurriedly and seized the opportunity to further examine the surroundings with the immortal mirror. Elsewhere, the Yu family was celebrating another wedding. Their residence was lively with music and celebration. The current head of the family was the seventh young master, Yu Chengyi, who was only head because Yu Su had used a Dharma artifact to kill his 5 brothers back then, allowing him to ascend to the position. This man, disinterested in managing the family's affairs, had delegated all power to the clan elders. He spent his days parading through the streets, taking concubines, riding horses, and watching dogfights, living a complacent life. Meanwhile, the power struggle among the clan elders raged on. Despite perpetually scheming against each other, all of them supported Yu Chengyi as the head of the family. This was how he had managed to stay in his position year after year. Several Qi cultivation realm elders of the Yu family had perished in their failed attempts to break through. Meanwhile, the external cultivators within the family seemed to be thriving, each supporting a different branch of the Yu family. The internal politics were intense, and among them was an extremely influential guest cultivator surnamed Lu. Li Xijun recalled the man. He was the one who had instigated the elders of the Yu family to block Yu Mugo outside the formation back then. He searched with his spiritual sense for a while, but could not locate his whereabouts. The Yu family had remained relatively stable over the years. Li Xijun checked a few times and confirmed that no new cultivators had reached the late stage of the Qi cultivation realm. The few already at the late stage Qi cultivation realm were all elderly men, in their 70s or 80s, with little hope of breaking through to the Foundation establishment realm. The internal strife back then had damaged the foundation of their family and disrupted their system. I wonder when they'll recover from it. Although the Li family had many spies within the Yu family, Li Xijun felt it was still necessary to inspect things personally to be sure. After finishing his observations, he crossed the rippling lake, riding the wind toward the Fei family's glacial cloud peak. The Fei family was more prosperous than in previous years. Though they had to cut down their expenses and direct their resources towards supporting Fei Qingyi, they were clearly living a comfortable life with backing in the sect. Despite lacking a foundation establishment realm cultivator, the visiting cultivators still treated them with respect. Additionally, Fei Qingyi had recently befriended influential masters and managed to reduce the tributes required from his clan. Although life had improved overall for the family, most of its members practiced various cultivation techniques now, with only very few following the Jade True Dao lineage. The Fei family had not sent anyone to visit the Li family in years, and the two families had grown increasingly distant. Li Xijun was not interested in further observations, so he turned back and rode the wind in search of Li Ximing. Li Ximing was absorbed in studying a spirit fruit and the three aspects breaking realm pill that Li Xijai had brought back. Though the pill's refining method was ancient and complex, his natural talent for alchemy allowed him to grasp the basic concepts and progress steadily. Upon hearing that he had to leave just as he was reaching an interesting phase in his work, Li Ximing reluctantly set it aside, muttering under his breath as he stood up. Li Xijun smiled and said, "Come on, you won't regret coming with me. You're the only one in the family without a Foundation Establishment Realm Dharma artifact. If the artifact is of good quality, you'll definitely benefit from having it in your possession." Hearing this, Li Ximing's face lit up instantly, and he quickly followed Li Xijun with excitement. "Since I broke through to the Foundation Establishment Realm, I've felt my cultivation progress speeding up. It's not like what the books say how it gradually slows down due to talent limitations. Everything still feels smooth when I cultivate." He shook his Taoist robe and continued confidently, "If I focus solely on my cultivation, I'm sure I can reach the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm within 10 years. Even if I need to divert my focus on refining pills, it should only take a bit longer than that." Li Xijun walked ahead with his hands clasped behind his back. "All right, the family can only provide you with resources. We don't have experience beyond the initial stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm, so you'll need to explore the future on your own," he said. He then shared the findings from his investigations, and Li Ximing simply nodded in understanding. Together, they rode the wind toward Great Jueting, passing through the forest and landing beside a small hill. The entrance to this cave lies deep within the heart of the mountain, with layers of rocks blocking it. The earth vein here is shallow, and the spiritual energy is weak. No one would think of establishing a cave dwelling here, which is why it has remained undiscovered all this while, Li Xijun explained, transmitting his voice through his spiritual sense. As Li Ximing saw him point out the location, wisps of light quietly emerged behind him, interweaving with each other. He shook his sleeves, and the wisps of light passed through his ribs, quickly condensing in front of him. In the span of a breath, a bright ray of light began to form, and white stone bricks materialized one after another, fitting together perfectly. They soon transformed into a massive gate, bright, crystalline, and imposing. The gate stood tall, with two white doorposts etched with mysterious shamanic patterns. Its eaves rose high above, towering and grand. The city gate shimmered with a hazy light, as if glowing under the heat of a blazing sun. Li Xijun examined the door closely and noticed strange, blurry words on the two doors, glyphs resembling a talisman, unreadable at first glance. Li Ximing, proud of his work, gestured toward the gate and explained, "The inscription on the right door reads, 'Bright as the shining light,' and the left door says, 'Radiant as the rising sun.' I had a moment of clarity when I established my foundation and recognized the writings right away." Li Xijun frowned, intrigued but confused. "There are words on your immortal foundation, huh? I've never heard of such a thing." He stared at the inscription for a moment longer, but his eyes began to hurt, so he had no choice but to look away. Meanwhile, Li Ximing activated the immortal foundation, causing the radiant origin pass to descend from the sky, landing gracefully on the mountainside. The closed doors swirled with energy, and bursts of bright light cascaded down, turning the soil and rocks into flying sand which tumbled down in a steady stream. Chapter 557, The Appearance of Radiant Origin Pass II. Li Ximing stood with his hands behind his back, and Li Xijun, watching in awe, praised, "Wow, a grade 4 cultivation technique is truly impressive." However, Li Ximing said, "It's hard to say. My immortal foundation follows the path of suppression and annihilation. The boundless ocean at home aligns with the pit water system, which isn't as forceful or destructive. So, they're very different. If I have to make a comparison, I'd say it's almost as powerful as our aunt's profound thunderpool." At this point, Li Xijun's mind wandered, and he whispered, "Our family's informants overseas reported something interesting. The Bright Yang essence has a Tao partner known as the Bright and Clear Heart, originating from an immortal island on Qinghong Island. You might want to take note of that." Li Ximing chuckled and shook his head. "I've just broken through to the Foundation Establishment Realm, and I don't even have any Purple Mansion Realm cultivation technique yet. Why would I bother about Tao partners right now?" He retorted rather playfully. "Perhaps it's a clue to start looking." Li Xijun replied. He paused before continuing to explain softly, "After all, acquiring a Purple Mansion Realm cultivation technique is nearly impossible. Even if one happens to obtain it, it would be heavily encrypted. I've discussed this with our aunt, and she believes this is the case too. If our family truly decides to follow the Bright Yang path, we must gather more relevant spells and techniques, then brainstorm on how to proceed from there." Reaching the crux of the matter, he shifted to using mana to transmit his words. "Our family possesses a Purple Mansion Realm cultivation technique manual, the aged courtly path scripture. Zijai is in the sect, so he can access information relevant to the Purple Mansion realm. While he can't share the techniques with us, he can use them as a reference to write some content for the Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual. Then, you can build upon it, with the help of Li and Cheng as well as the Yuan and Xiao families. The cultivation techniques we write ourselves will surely have many gaps. In the end, we might have to resort to the Deng family's method, filling those gaps with human lives over and over again. After several breakthroughs, eventually, we can attempt to reach the Purple Mansion realm. Li Ximing stayed silent, stretching out his hand. The pass on the mountain then reverted into streams of light and returned to him. The cave has been revealed, he announced. Li Xijun pressed his lips together, following Li Ximing. As soon as they entered the cave, they heard the sounds of gurgling water. His eyes glowed with a cold light, allowing him to see everything within the cave clearly. He soon spotted jagged rocks along the underground river, with a red rock perched at its highest point. It was the size of an ordinary table or stool, glowing brightly, and on its surface were etchings with intricate white lines that were strikingly beautiful. On top of the red rock was a palm-sized golden stone slab that was about the thickness of a finger. It seemed unremarkable at first glance, but was silently emitting a soft golden and white light. Li Xijun studied the object for a while but could not figure out what it was. He turned to Li Ximing, who also appeared confused. With a sigh, Li Ximing lamented, "Our family's rise within less than 100 years has been too swift. Although we have several Foundation Establishment realm cultivators now, we are still largely ignorant about these matters. It's not a problem. As long as we have secured it, we can always ask someone we trust for guidance," Li Xijun responded calmly. He drew the Hanlin sword from his waist. He hesitated for a moment, then refrained from using it on the rock and said, "We don't know the origin of this object, nor how to preserve or store it without damage. If we cut it hastily, we risk harming the treasure. It's better to leave it here in this cave and seal it with a formation." Li Ximing paused, then nodded in agreement, feeling that Li Xijun's suggestion made sense. Together, they sealed the cave, set up a formation to conceal it, and made their way home. "I'll ask my brother to send a team to guard this place," Li Xijun decided. The two were about to land when they spotted a middle-aged man waiting outside. He seemed proud and aloof with his cultivation at the peak of the Qi cultivation realm, and he was dressed in a yellow and white Taoist robe from the profound peak gate. Li Ximing recognized him immediately and greeted him with a warm smile. "Ah, it's you, fellow Taoist Gusun. What brings you to Moongaze Lake?" The man was Kong Gusun, a cultivator from Profound Peak Gate. He had accompanied Kong Tingyun to Wudu Peak to open up the fire vein and was well acquainted with Li Ximing. Despite his cold expression, Kong Gusun was actually a warm person born with a stoic face. He smiled and replied hoarsely, "Ah, fellow Taoist Ximing, I've come to bring you some good news." Li Ximing walked up to him curiously and asked, "What do you mean?" Kong Gusun politely cupped his fist before continuing, "My uncle was guarding the sect yesterday when he encountered a group of Azure Pond sect cultivators entering the sea from Lake Xian. It turned out that the leader of that group was Senior Li Xuanfeng from your esteemed clan. He's finally returned from the southern border. My uncle also mentioned that Li Xuanfeng had an otherworldly and formidable aura. His cultivation had reached the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, and he was clad in black armor, carrying a golden bow, like a god descending to earth." Li Ximing and Li Xijun exchanged startled looks. Second granduncle has returned from the southern border. The southern border was a deadly place for many clan cultivators, where most perished fighting demons. The Li family had long since lost hope that Li Xuanfeng would ever return. Years earlier, when Li Xuanfeng broke through to the Foundation Establishment realm and earned the trust of Taoist Master Yuan Su, there had been a brief spark of hope. The family was excited by the treasures he sent home and eagerly awaited his return, believing that they might one day be reunited. But Yuan Su never permitted his return. More than a decade had passed, and Li Xuanfeng was still stuck in the southern border. Hope slowly faded over time. Hence, the surprise in their hearts was indescribable when they heard this news. Kong Gusun observed the expressions on their faces and knew that his uncle's words had struck a chord. With a scan of his spiritual sense, his eyes widened as he exclaimed in awe, "Ximing, you've established your foundation." Li Ximing's face lit up with joy and he waved his hand dismissively. It was just a stroke of luck, hardly worth bringing it up for discussion. Li Xijun could not afford to linger around any longer. He left Li Ximing behind to entertain Kong Gusun while he soared into the air and headed toward the town to find Li Xuanxuan. That old man will surely be overjoyed when he hears this news. A smile spread across his face at the thought. He still remembered the old man's kind and sincere expression after he took the trip to Hangzhou Dao Gate. Once he arrived, Li Xijun hurriedly pulled Li Xuanxuan away from his desk where he had been busy drawing talismans and relayed the good news. "What?" Li Xuanxuan's face flushed bright red with excitement almost right away. He immediately flew up, calling for the younger generation to join him as he rushed toward Qingdu to ask Kong Gusun for more details. Kong Yusun, taken aback by the sudden crowd, spilled out a stream of praises for Li Xuanfeng. As Li Xuanxuan's delighted laughter echoed through the air, he turned to the younger cultivators standing beside him and said proudly, "I knew it. This younger brother of mine has always been extraordinary." When second uncle was still alive, he used to say that Xuanfeng was the most talented of the Xuan generation, and he was right all along. The old man had not felt this happy in a long time. He eagerly pulled Kong Yusun closer and asked, "Which part of the Eastern Sea is my young brother in now?" "He should be at Spleetered Island's marketplace," Kong Yusun replied. With that, Kong Yusun cupped his fist politely and prepared to take his leave, and the group of people saw him off. Li Xuanxuan looked at Li Xijun eagerly and ventured, "Maybe, I can go to the Eastern Sea." Li Xijun smiled at the old man's cautious demeanor and replied, "Granduncle, the Eastern Sea is full of dangers. It's too risky for you to go alone. You should perish the thought." Chapter 558 Request. "Oh," Li Xuanxuan responded somewhat dejectedly. He straightened his sleeves and sat on the mountain for a while, watching the two juniors chat. Feeling a bit restless, he decided to resume drawing talismans. The two juniors saw him off as he left. Li Ximing sighed in relief and said, "Grandfather seems to be in better spirits now." Li Xijun nodded in agreement and responded softly, "Although the old man's cultivation isn't high, he's experienced much in his life. He's able to answer our questions now, especially on matters we thought had been buried in the sands of time. Seeing him in good spirits truly brings us some relief." The two walked side by side. Li Ximing, dressed in a lavish golden Taoist robe, paused for a moment before speaking softly. "I've only heard that second granduncle is a phenomenal archer unrivaled in the world. With his golden bow, he's capable of great feats. If he can return, our home will be well protected." "I think that's unlikely. It's not easy for anyone to leave the southern border permanently," Li Xijun replied with a hint of thoughtfulness in his tone. By the time both of them were born, Li Xuanfeng had already left for the southern border. Since Li Xijun had never met him, his understanding of this second granduncle was based on family records and stories from the elders. Unlike Li Xuanxuan, his joy mostly stemmed from the idea that the family might finally have an elder in the middle stage of the foundation establishment. Now that he had calmed down and his initial excitement had faded away, he began reflecting thoughtfully on the situation. Li Ximing seemed to be doing the same and asked in confusion, "Since the second granduncle has left the southern border, why hasn't he returned to visit home? Is he on some kind of mission?" "It seems likely," Li Xijun said with a nod as he paused, then hesitated before continuing. "I've heard that someone from the Ning family married him. After all these years, perhaps he has children of his own now. That would make those children on the southern border our elders. As for why he hasn't returned, the adults likely have their reasons. Maybe his family is being controlled so he's forced to obey the orders of Azure Pond," he speculated. Li Ximing nodded and replied, "That makes sense." The two paused, reflecting on the matter for a while before Li Ximing returned to Wudu Peak to continue his study of alchemy. Li Xijun wrote a letter to his aunt, Li Qinghong, who was in seclusion, and another to send to Zongquan Island. Then he settled down to practice quietly. Spleetered Island, Azure Pond Market. Li Xuanfeng circled the sea, familiarizing himself with the terrain and gathering detailed information about Spleetered Island before returning to the market. The spiritual energy of the earth veins on Spleetered Island was peculiar, making it impossible to set up formations on the island itself. The Azure Pond Market was located on the seabed not far from the island. Li Xuanfeng investigated the earth vein and learned that the spiritual energy here was not any better, as the market had only been protected by a high-grade formation. Spleetered Island itself was abundant in spiritual qi and was teeming with treasures and strange terrains. The island had many straits, some deep underground and shrouded in darkness, with vast, boundless spaces. It was said that these remnants were left behind from battles that were fought by immortals. The island, in its entirety, functioned more like a vast entrance, connecting multiple valleys and straits. Cultivators gathered qi here, while devil cultivators also roamed the gorges, engaging in killings and looting. The deeper one ventured, the more chaotic and dangerous the environment became. Li Xuanfeng walked around the island but did not venture too deeply, and he soon returned to the market quietly. Upon arrival, he found an Azure Pond cultivator waiting by his cave dwelling. "Greetings, Taoist. My master would like to meet you and has been waiting for quite some time," the cultivator said respectfully. Li Xuanfeng immediately recognized him as Ning Heiyuan's subordinate. He nodded and followed him to Ning Heiyuan's cave dwelling. The door was open and rich spiritual qi flowed out freely. Inside, Ning Heiyuan was drinking. "Brother-in-law, you're here." Ning Heiyuan greeted him with a slightly flushed face as though he had drunk quite a bit. He filled a wine cup to the brim and gestured for Li Xuanfeng to sit. "Speaking of which, fate really likes bringing me and the Li family together." Ning Heiyuan hummed. Li Xuanfeng nodded but thought silently to himself, "Why is this guy acting so friendly now? Does he have a favor to ask of me?" He stared at Ning Heiyuan, who suddenly appeared quite humble, almost like a junior in his presence. Ning Heiyuan continued politely, "When I visited Moongaze Lake with my aunt back then, I had hoped to seek guidance on swordsmanship from your esteemed family. I traded a few blows with Taoist Qinghong while we sparred on the mountain, and we exchanged names. I was overpowered, and that was when I truly realized the strength of your family's Dao lineage." Xuanfeng was taken aback by how humbly he spoke. He knew that Li Qinghong, as a chi cultivator, would never have been Ning Heiyuan's match. At best, she could only evenly match him with her lightning spell. Ning Heiyuan's words were likely intended to flatter the Li family. Li Xijun smiled and said, "Brother, there's no need to be so modest. I'm well aware of Qinghong's strength. She's certainly not your opponent." Ning Heiyuan responded humbly to Li Xijun's comment. Since the man had said so, he stopped beating around the bush and stated his business. "Brother-in-law, I've heard of your reputation even overseas. The Taoist master trusts you greatly. In the past 100 years, only a few have been as favored as you." Li Xijun was well aware of the trust Yuan Su had placed in him, and silently awaited the rest of Ning Heiyuan's intentions. Sure enough, after a brief moment of hesitation, Ning Heiyuan said, "Once you return, could you help me find out how long I must remain in this eastern sea?" Li Xijun lowered his gaze and remained silent. Ning Heiyuan grew a bit anxious, but his tone remained polite as he explained, "I've asked several times, but the Taoist master refused to see me. I understand my mistake now. When I was younger, I was foolish, thinking that because the Ning family had been allies of the Kai family for 100 years, I could do whatever I wanted with those under my family's governance." His voice grew heavier as he continued, "After spending so many years in the Eastern Sea, I've come to realize that without the Taoist master, our Ning family is nothing but a servant to the Kai family. I truly understand my mistake now. Please, Taoist, I ask you to speak to the Taoist master on my behalf." Li Xijun looked at him. Ning Heiyuan was talented, had mastered many spells and techniques, and should have been at the level of someone like Ning Wan. However, spending 10 years in the Eastern Sea had hindered his reputation and delayed his cultivation. Now, with a gloomy and slightly decadent expression, Ning Heiyuan was a far cry from the proud figure he had once been. Li Xijun responded softly, "This matter is not urgent. I still have a year or so before I return. Fellow Taoist, please think carefully about how to word your request. I'll take a letter back for you." Ning Heiyuan was momentarily taken aback. Instead of speaking on his behalf, Li Xijun offered to bring his letter back. He smiled wryly, realizing that Li Xijun was not a simple man. "I've been too impatient. I need to take a more measured approach. First, I must build a good relationship with him and win his favor through the connection with my sister. I need a long-term plan." Ning Heiyuan then apologized, took a sip of wine, and nodded. "Indeed, there's no rush. If the Taoist needs anything in the market, feel free to tell me." Xuanfeng nodded and said, "I've just come from the southern border, and some information is difficult to gather there. If there's anything I need in the future, I'll be sure to trouble you again." Ning Heiyuan nodded repeatedly and quickly saw him out. Once Li Xijun left, he returned to his cave dwelling, sat at the jade table, and reflected for a long while. "I thought he was just a tool for the Taoist master, but I did not expect him to be a falcon tamed by the old man. No wonder he's been so favored by the Taoist master, and even married sister Mayan despite his insignificant family background." Ning Heiyuan recalled Li Xijun's attire, aura, and golden age longbow that had been tempered countless times. Combined with some recent rumors, he could not help but sneer. An armored man with eyes sharp as a hawk. Seems like someone's luck is about to run out. Chapter 559, Journey to Purple Smoke I. Li Xijun parted ways with Li Ximing, returning alone to his cave dwelling to rest. Having missed his opportunity to break through to the 7th heavenly layer, he knew it would take some time before he could attempt it again. Sitting in the cave with his hand resting on his sword, he fell into deep thought. The bright Yang Dao lineage might be on Mount Qingdu, but it's unlikely I'll ever have access to it. The techniques granted by the immortal mirror are unpredictable and only last through the Foundation establishment realm. It seems I can't rely solely on external resources. Li Xijun had hinted to Li Ximing about the situation to gauge his response, as he knew Li Ximing prioritized cultivation above all else. When he reached a bottleneck in his path, there was no telling what actions he might take. Li Xijun himself felt uncertain about his own Foundation establishment realm breakthrough, fearing he might not survive it. If that day truly comes, without me here to mediate, things might get ugly. This worry weighed heavily on him. Li Yuanjiao remained fixated on the jade buckle, and though Li Xijun could not assist him with it, he understood that Yu Muxian would not be easy to deal with. Should things come to a crisis, Li Yuanjiao's decisive nature would not wait for Yu Muxian to achieve the Purple Mansion realm. With a sigh, Li Xijun set these thoughts aside for now. He bore no resentment toward Li Ximing over this. Li Ximing had been exceptionally gifted since birth, and if he could acquire the right cultivation method, he showed true potential for being the first in the family to achieve the Purple Mansion realm. The allure of divine abilities was powerful, and it was natural for him to pursue his aspirations with all his focus. After all, the allure of roaming the great void, divine abilities to reflect the mysteries, living for 5 centuries with honors from the immortal sex, freedom to toy with the mortal world, and insight into hidden secrets, such temptations surpass all else. Li Xijun sighed, convincing himself of such great temptations. To possess his own bright yang divine ability, to traverse the great void freely, embracing beauty and warding off calamities without being a pawn to be sacrificed at will. To witness the rise and fall of clouds, and to be honored wherever he went, no matter whom he met, such a vision was irresistibly enticing. The temptation Li Ximing faced was on a different scale altogether. While the rest of them could spend some time on mundane affairs and only circle around the Foundation establishment realm sooner or later, Li Ximing's choices could determine whether he ascended to that level. Faced with such a decision, his indecisiveness was understandable. For Li Xijun, it left little room for blame. As he sat in contemplation, there came a gentle knock at the door of his cave. A young girl entered, dressed in a white dress, who was around 15 or 16, with an attractive pair of phoenix eyes. She spoke softly. "Elder brother, Brother Ming asked me to bring over a Dharma artifact." This girl was Li Jiangxian, now at the 4th stage of the embryonic breathing realm. She did not like to travel, preferring to spend her days on Mount Qingdu. Li Xijun glanced at her and saw that she was offering him a jade bead. The bead was a rich blue-green and tied with a red string. It was the Azure Manifestation, an exceptional Dharma artifact at the Qi cultivation realm, just shy of the Foundation establishment realm. Li Yuexiang then continued, "Brother Ming mentioned that he has already reached the Foundation establishment realm, so this artifact, which can summon a peak Qi cultivation realm green deer, is of no further use to him. He asked me to bring it to you." Li Xijun looked at the jade bead and replied softly, "Take it and use it yourself. I spend my days on the mountain and have no need for something this valuable. Let us save it for Chenghui," Li Yuexiang replied. Li Chenghui, sent back by Li Xijun, was now studying on the mountain, though he had not yet reached the age for cultivation. Li Yuexiang, strong-willed as ever, firmly declined and placed the bead on the table. Left with no choice, Li Xijun nodded and asked gently, "Have you chosen a spiritual Qi type? What technique are you planning to cultivate?" Li Yuexiang answered, "I plan to consume the long-marching pheasant flame and cultivate the pheasant flame's long march technique." Noticing she had not consulted Li Yunjiao on her choice, Li Xijun felt a slight headache coming on but nodded silently. Li Yuexiang added, "Brother, you should think more about yourself." Li Xijun simply nodded, waving her off, then spread out the registry on the table. Several of the Cheng and Ming generation were close to the Qi cultivation realm, and he needed to make proper arrangements for them. Now, the Qi cultivation realm itself was no longer significant. Only the Foundation establishment realm could bring someone into the Li family's core decision-making circle. Li Xijun reread the names of the dozen or so disciples, thinking to himself, who knows how many will fall along the way, or how many will reach the Foundation establishment realm. On Mount Qingdu, time passed as Li Qinghong continued her cultivation for several months. She opened her eyes and, as usual, circulated her immortal foundation, enveloping herself in a field of purple light. It's time to perform the spell and call upon the lightning again. Casting the spell and reciting the incantation, powerful purple light surged forward and lightning flickered. The statues on her right began to light up one by one, and a wave of information flooded her mind. March 23, 3rd, north of Wintersweet City in Yue State. Mystic thunder descends on Mount Daoxuan. October 6th, Mount Fengqi in Yue State. Celestial yin thunder descends. December 2nd, Goose Lake Island off the Quinee Cape. Towering thunder descends. A succession of messages unfolded, with over a dozen in total, ending with a hazy, broken phrase, "Flood dragonkin, forbidden to attain converging water, now returns to heaven and earth. Falling water, rising storm in eastern sea." Li Qinghong processed the information, feeling an inner shock growing within her as realization dawned on her. A demon king has fallen in the eastern sea. The message from the altar confirmed that a demon king at the peak of the Purple Mansion realm had failed in their Golden Core realm breakthrough, resulting in death and the dissolution of their Tao. This failure triggered a cascade of celestial phenomena, including the descent of thunder and falling water rising storm. The news, unexpected as it was, could not be immediately capitalized on, but knowing something of this magnitude put her a step ahead. She could not help but feel a spark of excitement. This altar has this kind of function. Now, with heaven and earth in turmoil and even communication talismans failing, its usefulness is immense. If I can know of these events in advance, I can help the family prepare better. The Tao of Thunder shortened one's lifespan. Li Qinghong had already lost about 30% of hers in pursuit of it. She did not mind, but she did not wish for other family members to tread the same path. However, seeing it now, there was no alternative. This altar requires someone who has cultivated either Profound Thunderpool or Winter Thunderclap to operate it. Without someone after me to continue this path, it would be lost. Turning these thoughts over in her mind, another issue surfaced in her mind. This technique came from Lingyanzi of the Purple Smoke Gate, and I never clarified its origins. I cannot delay this any longer. Regardless of whether this was arranged by a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, I must visit Purple Smoke Gate. Li Qinghong pulled a token from her storage pouch. The token shimmered with a beautiful violet hue, and she gazed at it for a moment. Lingyanzi left this token with us back then, allowing my family's disciples to be admitted into the Purple Smoke Gate. This is the perfect opportunity to use it. This time I will head to the Purple Smoke Gate, pay a visit to Lingyanzi, and then make my way to the Eastern Sea to gather thunder. Having made her decision, she stood, gathering the few letters by the altar. She casually glanced through them, a faint smile forming as she thought, second uncle has finally left the southern border. She then rode a thunderbolt up to Mount Qingdu, where Li Xijun had just finished his cultivation and was having some water in the courtyard. Chapter 560, Journey to Purple Smoke, II. After Li Qinghong explained her plans, Li Xijun nodded thoughtfully and said in a low voice, with Situ Mo confined on Golden Sack Island, now is an opportune time to go out. Since you are headed to the Eastern Sea, Aunt, you can also meet second granduncle. As for the Purple Smoke Gate, Li Xijun asked, which younger family member will we send? Li Qinghong pondered briefly, then replied softly, most of the Cheng and Ming generation have average talent. Cheng Huai needs to remain at home. Yuexiang may be the only one with enough aptitude. Li Xijun shook his head. Without Uncle Yun Jiao's approval, it will not work. Let us set this aside for now. Aunt, go to the Eastern Sea and consult Uncle Jiao first, then return at your leisure. Very well. Seeing his reasoning, Li Qinghong nodded in agreement. She gathered her things and set out alone, riding the wind. Li Xijun escorted her to the edge of Moongaze Lake, then returned to his cave dwelling to review his sword techniques twice more before sealing the stone door to resume his cultivation. On Mount Qingdu, the spring breeze lingered, the grass and trees grew lush, and the immortal towers and pavilions stood with only scattered figures, soon swallowed by the deepening night. As Li Qinghong left Mount Qingdu, a light rain began to fall, and looking out, she saw endless dark clouds stretching across the sky. The rain itself was gentle, but it was unrelenting. She rode the wind through it for a long time and still could not find the edge of this cloud cover. Had she not received that message from the altar earlier, she would have thought it was just a heavy, lingering rainstorm. But now she suspected it was the aftermath of a failed Golden Core realm breakthrough, an ominous celestial phenomenon. Continuing on her journey, she flew over Yufu Prefecture and Mount Dongli and soon spotted the territory of the Purple Smoke Gate in the distance. There, a female cultivator was standing in midair, dressed in the robes of the Purple Smoke Gate, staring up at the sky with a furrowed brow. As Li Qinghong approached on a flash of lightning, the female cultivator quickly noticed her and politely bowed, greeting her in a soft voice. Disciple Shen Yanking of the Purple Smoke Gate greets the honored elder. May I know? Li Qinghong of the Li family from Mount Qingdu, Li Qinghong answered promptly. The female cultivator, who appeared to be around Li Xijun's age and at the 7th heavenly layer of Qi cultivation realm, looked surprised. Ah, so it is you. Yanking has long admired your name, the girl praised, beaming. Li Qinghong was not well known, so she assumed this was merely polite flattery, but then Shen Yanking stepped forward, speaking sincerely. I heard recently that you successfully reached the Foundation Establishment realm. Female cultivators who practice the Way of Thunder are already rare, and those who achieve Foundation Establishment realm are even fewer. I greatly admire you. Li Qinghong looked at her with some interest and asked, you also practice the Way of Thunder? I do, Shen Yanking replied with a warm smile as she continued. I come from the Shen family in Yue cultivating sect, and our Taoist master once acquired a thunder technique early on. Thus, we have a long-standing tradition of thunder cultivation. So, you are a direct line of an immortal clan then, Li Qinghong muttered softly. The Shen family was a long-standing immortal clan of the Purple Mansion realm, based in the Sioux State's Yue cultivating sect. Shen Yanking was as esteemed as the Xiao family's Xiao Yuanci. Despite her high status, she showed no arrogance. She enthusiastically guided Li Qinghong down toward the Purple Smoke Gate's territory, asking, what brings Senior here? Li Qinghong replied, I have come to pay my respects to Senior Lingyanzi. Shen Yanking nodded in understanding, producing a purple token to lead her inside. Towering peaks rose into view, and countless summits lay shrouded in dense violet clouds, which coiled and wove in strands, forming various shapes that gave the entire place an ethereal, fairy-like atmosphere. The pavilions and towers stood exquisitely against the scenery. The Purple Smoke Gate had claimed this wondrous land, gathering many techniques related to it over the years, transforming the mountain into an immortal sanctuary. Cultivators from various regions and even overseas often traveled great distances to gather qi. Shen Yanking introduced, the Purple Smoke Blessed Land is well known far and wide. It is said that 6 or 7 parts of the world's violet qi flow from here, and all Dao lineages based in violet qi regard this place as a sacred land. If Senior is fortunate, you might even catch sight of the immortal landscape when the morning sun rises. Seeing Li Qinghong taking in the breathtaking beauty, Shen Yanqing continued with a smile. The old peak master used to boast often about his friendship with your clan. I suppose he has finally been proven right. Li Qinghong recalled that Li Tongya had described Ling Yanzi as somewhat eccentric and gave a slight smile in response. Shen Yanqing then softly added, I myself cultivate celestial thunder through the celestial cloud thunder technique. If I achieve foundation establishment realm, it will become the lightful thunder. May I ask which technique Senior uses? Not sure why Shen Yanqing was asking, Li Qinghong still politely replied, Profound Thunderpool. Profound Thunderpool. Shen Yanqing pondered this for a moment, frowning slightly. After a brief pause, she muttered quietly, I have not heard of that one. It originally stemmed from Winter Thunderclap, Li Qinghong added. Understanding dawned on Shen Yanqing and she smiled brightly. Ah, so it is also a form of celestial thunder. If there is ever a chance, I would love to see the Senior's thunder altar in action. This comment from the girl revealed quite a bit of information, and Li Qinghong felt a spark of insight, thinking to herself, so, it is a form of celestial thunder. It seems celestial thunder techniques have an affinity for altar-based spells. With the Shen family's ancient heritage, perhaps I can learn something useful. Seeing Li Qinghong nod with a smile, Shen Yanqing beamed, her eyes brightening as the conversation drew them closer. She added with a nod, our 3 thunder lineages differ from others. We avoid all blood qi. Because of this, we tend to be especially close to one another. Once I reach the foundation establishment realm, I will be honored to demonstrate the thunder invocation technique for you. Li Qinghong paused, a little stunned, realizing for the first time that thunder cultivators should not consume blood qi. In an instant, many doubts in her mind unraveled, bringing her mind a sudden clarity. No wonder there are no thunder Dao lineages in Jiangnan. Thunder techniques faded in both the overseas regions and Jiangnan. That explains why this girl is so warm and friendly with me. Most pills circulating in Jiangnan were made with blood qi, and if consuming such substances indeed harmed thunder cultivators, then it was inevitable that thunder Dao lineages would decline. Among the 3 sects and 7 gates, there were few with thunder lineages, much less any capable of cultivating to the Purple Mansion realm. Meanwhile, most clan cultivators and rogue cultivators did not fully understand this, making it even harder for thunder techniques to be cultivated successfully. As Shen Yanqing continued, she explained, there are certain pills, and I am sure Senior knows this as well, that will cause a thunder cultivator's progress to initially surge after consuming blood qi. But soon after, progress slows, and those unaware often take more, causing them to stagnate and face difficulty breaking through, eventually shortening their lifespan. Li Qinghong felt a surge of relief. When she was young, her family had been impoverished, without many pills to take. Later, she was sent to the Fei family, where she similarly had no access to such resources. By the time she reached the qi cultivation realm, Li Jiao had received the white talisman, and what little the family had went to him. Li Qinghong had taken only 1 or 2 pills, likely sourced from the Xiao family, and somehow avoided further exposure. Years later, when Wang Zun revealed the truth, she had stopped taking them entirely. Even so, Li Qinghong now understood why her cultivation had slowed around the 3rd and 4th heavenly layer of qi cultivation realmate was likely due to those few pills. She exhaled slowly, feeling a deep gratitude for her grandfather Li Tongya. She even began to wonder, could it be that grandfather suspected something and arranged everything so carefully? Lost in thought for a moment, she quickly adjusted and gained another insight. No wonder this girl is so close to me. If thunder Dao lineages cannot touch blood qi, then they also cannot rely on shared Dao for cultivation speed or divine ability training. This naturally removes many of the usual reservations. Shen Yanqing continued to politely introduce the various sites of the purple smoke gate up ahead, while Li Qinghong, now carrying a newfound appreciation and sense of relief, walked through this sect bathed in violet clouds with a lightened heart.